Stories number 1. My relatives kept pressuring me to misuse my work access for family favors, and I walked out. Family dinners are supposed to be a chance to relax, catch up, and feel grounded, but last night reminded me exactly why I dread some of these gatherings, because they turn into business meetings where I'm suddenly the resource instead of just a nephew, cousin, or son. We were at this chain Italian place in suburban Illinois, big round table. Too many breadsticks, kids at one end glued to tablets, while the adults were ordering wine and talking over each other. I was already a little tired from work and hadn't even wanted to go, but my mom, Linda, insisted it was important to show face because my uncle Frank was in town. Frank works in marketing and is the type of guy who calls himself a hustler unironically. He waited maybe 5 minutes before bringing up my job. I work for a mid-size e-commerce company. Nothing glamorous, but I'm in a department with access to a lot of sensitive data. Customer demographics, order patterns, supplier analytics, stuff people in marketing would drool over. So Frank leans in, pats me on the back like we're best buddies, and says, "Hey champ, you could pull me a couple of data sets, right? Just general stuff, zip codes, demographics, that kind of thing. My team would eat that up." I laughed awkwardly and said, "Yeah, that's not something I can do. Company policy is really strict about client and customer data. That's confidential." He waved his hand like I just said something silly. "Come on. Everyone does it. Nobody's going to know if you shoot me a spreadsheet." Before I could even reply, my Aunt Susan jumped in. She's dating this guy named Dave, who brought along his 20-something son, Kyle. I'd never met Kyle before, and the kid had that look like he was already bored out of his mind. Susan goes, "Oh, while we're on the topic, can you put in a referral for Kyle? There's that open project coordinator role, right? It would really help him get his foot in the door." I said, "That role needs 3 years project management experience. The system asks me to vouch that I know the candidate's qualifications. I can't lie on a referral." Kyle just shrugged like he didn't care either way, but Susan looked offended. "It's just a formality. Everyone knows referrals are about who you know." I repeated, "Not at my company. They actually screen refers, and I don't want my name attached to a false statement. That's a fireable offense." At this point, I could feel the heat rising in my face because now I had Frank still nudging me for data, Susan glaring because I wouldn't help her family, and then my cousin Marissa chimed in from across the table. "At least hook us up with your employee discount. I heard you get like 30% off electronics." "I've been eyeing a new laptop." Another relative jumped in about sneakers, another about a smart TV, and suddenly the entire dinner conversation shifted to a wish list like I was Santa Claus with a corporate credit card. I took out my phone, opened our company's code of conduct PDF, and scrolled to the exact section about conflicts of interest, misuse of employee privileges, and unauthorized data sharing. I put it on the table and said, "Look, this isn't me being stingy. This is literally the rulebook. If I do what you're asking, I could lose my job. They track discounts. They audit referrals. They monitor data pulls." Frank chuckled. "Rules are made to be bent. K, you think nobody bends them?" Susan chimed in again. "Exactly. Nobody's going to catch you. It's family, not strangers. You'd rather stay loyal to some corporation than your own blood." That hit me wrong, I said. "It's not about loyalty. It's about me not wanting to be unemployed or hauled into HR. If I break rules for you, I'm risking everything. You guys don't seem to care about the consequences for me." The table got weirdly quiet for a second, and then someone made a joke about me being too uptight. My dad tried to smooth it over by changing the subject, but Frank wasn't letting go. He whispered, "Seriously though, just one data set. It could make me a lot of money." And that was it. My appetite vanished. I felt cornered and disrespected, so I stood up, dropped my napkin on the table, and said, "Dinner's over for me. I'm not a vending machine for favors. Stop asking." I walked out without waiting for dessert. My mom texted me later saying everyone was shocked I stormed off and that I embarrassed her. I told her flat out, "I'm not going to events where my family pressures me to put my career at risk. It sucks because I don't want to be estranged, but I also don't want to keep explaining that my job isn't their personal perk program. If they can respect boundaries, then I guess I'll keep missing these dinners, because at the end of the day, my job isn't a family ATM, and I'm not going to lose everything just to get them a discount or help them cheat the system." Update. So, walking out of that dinner really set off a chain reaction I wasn't fully prepared for. I knew there would be some grumbling, but I underestimated just how much drama my family can create when they feel disrespected. The first person I heard from was my mom, Linda. She called me the next morning with that tone only moms can pull off, a mix of disappointment and guilt trip. She said, "Do you realize how you made me look last night? Everyone was just trying to include you, and you stormed out like a child." I told her, "Mom, I'm not a child. I'm an adult who was being pressured to commit fireable offenses. That's not including me. That's exploiting me." She sighed and went into the whole family is family speech. But when I asked her directly if she thought I should risk my job just to make Frank happy or to get Kyle hired under false pretenses, she didn't have much to say. She just said, "You could have handled it more gracefully." Then came the texts. Marissa sent me a sarcastic, "Guess I'll pay full price for my laptop. Thanks for nothing." Susan actually texted me a wall of passive-aggressive lines about how I humiliated her boyfriend's son in front of everyone by basically saying he wasn't qualified for the role. She accused me of gatekeeping opportunities and added a line that really pissed me off. "If you really loved your family, you'd do what you could to help them get ahead." I didn't even respond to that one. But the kicker, Uncle Frank, he actually called me in the middle of the workday. He went on this whole rant about how business is about who you know and how this was my chance to prove I wasn't just some rule-following drone. He said if I'd slipped him the data, he could have cut me in for a nice bonus later. I flat out told him, "Frank, what you're asking me to do is illegal. If you call me about this again, I'm blocking your number." Silence. Then he muttered something about me being brainwashed by corporate America and hung up. Later that week, I got a call from my dad. He's always been quieter than my mom, not the type to stir things up. He said he understood where I was coming from, but suggested maybe I should just smile and deflect at these dinners instead of confronting people head-on. Basically, his advice was to show up. Let them make their requests, nod, then quietly ignore them. I get his point, but honestly, that feels like death by 1,000 cuts. Why should I sit there and smile while my own family keeps treating me like a walking discount code or a backdoor into my company? The weirdest part is that a couple of cousins reached out privately to say they agreed with me. My cousin Emily messaged me on Instagram saying, "I don't blame you. Frank's always trying to squeeze favors out of people. You just happen to be his new target." She said she respected me for setting boundaries, that she's staying out of the drama because she doesn't want Susan and Frank on her case. So now it feels like half the family thinks I'm the villain, and the other half quietly agrees, but won't say it out loud. I haven't been to another family dinner since, even though there's been at least 2. My mom keeps pushing me to come just for the kids, the younger cousins, but I told her plainly, I'm not putting myself back in that situation until I hear a genuine apology. Do I think I'll get one? Probably not. Frank thinks rules don't apply to him. Susan thinks any criticism is an attack. Marissa only cares about her laptop, but me? I actually feel lighter, like I ripped off a band-aid. I've always been the go-along to get along type at these gatherings, but last week I realized that standing my ground felt way better than swallowing my discomfort. If anything, this whole thing clarified one big truth. Family or not, people who don't respect your boundaries will keep pushing until you push back harder. And if they never talk to me the same way again, I'm okay with that, because I'd rather keep my integrity and my job than cave just to make freeloaders happy. Final update. It's been a few months since the family dinner blow-up, and I figured I'd give some closure since a lot of people asked how things turned out. Short version, I stuck to my boundaries, and while it shook up family dynamics, it was the right call. After my last post, I kept my distance. I didn't go to the next 3 family gatherings. At first, it was awkward because my mom Linda called every week asking, "Are you really not coming? Everyone's asking about you." She hated how empty my chair looked at the table. I told her flat out, "I'll come back when I know people respect me, not before." She didn't love that answer, but she eventually stopped pushing so hard. The first real shift came through my dad. He invited me out for coffee one Saturday, just him and me. He's not the emotional type, but he said, "Look, I've seen you get taken advantage of at these dinners before. I don't think you were wrong. I just hate seeing the family split like this." I told him I hated it too, but it's not on me to fix it. That seemed to click for him. He admitted Frank has always been pushy, Susan always defensive, and Marissa always entitled. He just never wanted to rock the boat. He told me he respected me for standing my ground even if the fallout was messy. Hearing that from him meant a lot. Meanwhile, Frank tried to reach out once. He texted me something half apology, half insult like, "Sorry if I came on too strong, but you really don't understand how business works." I didn't even respond. Susan, on the other hand, doubled down. She's apparently been telling anyone who'll listen that I sabotaged her boyfriend's son's career by not lying on a referral. That one still blows my mind. Marissa posted something petty on Facebook about family not having your back when it matters, which I just ignore. The biggest surprise? My cousin Emily. Remember how she messaged me privately saying she agreed with me, didn't want to get dragged in? Well, she ended up getting cornered at a family barbecue when Frank started bragging about how unfair I'd been. She actually stood up for me, told everyone I had every right to say no and that she admired me for putting boundaries on paper. She told me later that the look on Frank's face was priceless, apparently. A few other cousins chimed in and the tide has started to shift a bit. As for me, the distance has been honestly kind of nice. I didn't realize how draining those dinners were until I stepped back. No more feeling like I have to guard myself against some new scheme or request. No more subtle guilt trips, just peace. I still see my parents one-on-one and spend time with the younger cousins when I can. But I don't miss the big dinners at all. And the job, going strong. I had my annual review recently, and part of my boss's feedback was that they appreciate my integrity and professionalism. Hearing that, after months of being told by family I was too uptight or corporate brainwashed, felt like validation that I'm not crazy for taking the rules seriously. Do I wish things had gone differently? Yet, of course, I wish Frank could admit he was wrong, or Susan could see that lying for her boyfriend's son wasn't a small ask. It was career-ending territory for me, but I've accepted that they probably never will. They'll just keep painting me as the villain in their version of the story. And I'm okay with that, because I know what really happened, and I know where my lines are. Funny enough, the best part of all this is how much less anxious I feel now. Before, I dread family events because I knew there would be some ask, some dig, some just one little favor. Now I feel free. So yeah, maybe the family dinners will never be the same. Maybe Frank and Susan will never talk to me normally again. But you know what? I kept my job, I kept my integrity, and I finally learned that saying no isn't the end of the world. Sometimes it's just the beginning of people finally taking you seriously. And honestly, that's a trade I'll take every single time. Story's number to my coworker assumes I'll drive her home every day, but it's starting to become a problem. So I just started this new job 2 weeks ago. I'm 20, female, and still in that weird stage of young adulthood where you're excited to finally have steady work, but also trying not to accidentally sign yourself up for something that'll make life harder than it needs to be. I work at this massive resort-style property in Florida that has multiple restaurants spread out across the grounds. Think lots of parking lots, golf carts zipping around, and tourists everywhere. During my very first week, I got paired up with another girl my age named Kayla. She also works in one of the restaurants, though not the same one as me. She's nice enough, kind of chatty, the type that tells you her life story in the first hour of meeting you. She told me she lives with her boyfriend, Derek, and that he usually drives her to work since she doesn't have a license. I didn't ask why she couldn't drive, it didn't feel like my business. Anyway, near the end of my first week, she asked me if I could do her a quick favor. Her boyfriend works on the opposite side of the property, and since we usually finish around the same time, she wondered if I could just drop her off at his restaurant so she could hang out there until his shift ended at 10. That didn't sound like a big deal to me. It was literally 5 minutes out of my way, so I told her sure. I ended up doing it 3 times that week. She'd hop in my car, thank me profusely, and then we'd make small talk about our shifts, rude customers, or random TikToks she wanted to show me. Honestly, it wasn't bad. I didn't feel like she was using me, just that she needed a small favor and I was in a position to help. Then Monday rolled around. We both got off around 5:15, and instead of asking me to take her to Derek's restaurant, she said she'd finally gotten a spare key to their apartment and asked if I could just drive her home. She said it was only about 15 minutes away. I didn't think much of it until we were actually on the road. Turns out, it's more like 25 minutes during rush hour traffic. And not only that, it's in the opposite direction of where I live. And the last stretch to her place is down this awful, rocky road that feels like it's destroying my car's suspension. By the time I got home, I had spent an extra 45 minutes just because of this quick favor. I told myself, okay, No big deal, it's just one time. But then Tuesday came, and she casually slid into the passenger seat again like it was expected. Same thing on Wednesday. By Thursday, I was dreading the end of my shift, because I knew I was going to be her Uber driver again. The kicker is, she doesn't even ask anymore. She just kind of lingers near me after clocking out, follows me to the parking lot, and then climbs in like it's automatic. And I'm sitting there, gripping the wheel, thinking, how did this become my life? To make things worse, Kayla's one of those people who talks a lot, and not always about cheerful things. On one drive, she vented about how Derek's car smells like fast food trash and that's why she doesn't like riding home with him. Another time, she went on about how unfair it was that her mom wouldn't co-sign for her driver's license test after she failed the first one. It was like I had accidentally signed myself up to be her unpaid therapist and chauffeur all rolled into one. Now I'm stuck in this weird limbo. On one hand, I genuinely don't hate Kayla. She's not mean, she's not malicious, and I don't think she's even fully aware of how much of an imposition she's making. She's just young and used to people bailing her out, I think. On the other hand, I cannot keep doing this every single day. It's burning up my gas money, eating into my free time, and honestly stressing me out because I feel trapped. The problem is, I don't know how to bring it up without making things awkward. We work the same shifts almost every day, in restaurants right next to each other. If I tell her no, she's still going to be standing there at clock out, expecting a ride. If I say yes reluctantly, then I'm just resentful. I've thought about making excuses, like saying I have errands or pretending I have plans after work, but I don't want to lie, and I especially don't want to set myself up for her asking, well, can you just take me halfway? Or oh, it'll only be today, I promise. What I really want to say is something like, hey, I don't mind helping out once in a while, but I can't commit to driving you home every day. It's too far out of my way. That feels honest but also polite. The problem is, I don't know if it'll come across as cold or make her start resenting me at work. I just got this job. I don't want some tension-filled dynamic with the first coworker I bonded with. I was venting about this to my roommate, Jessica, and she said, you've got to nip this in the bud before it becomes permanent. People will treat you how you let them treat you. And she's right. If I don't set a boundary now, I'm going to end up being Kayla's driver for the rest of eternity. So now I'm stuck rehearsing how to phrase it without sounding like a jerk. I don't mind helping occasionally, like dropping her at Derek's restaurant or giving her a ride if she's stuck once in a blue moon. But I am not willing to keep being her personal taxi. I guess my real question is, how do I word this without blowing up the work relationship? I want to keep things civil, but I need my time, gas, and sanity back, so I finally did it. I worked up the nerve to have the talk with Kayla, and it was about as awkward as I expected but maybe not as bad as I feared. It happened last Friday after our shift. We both clocked out around 5:20, and, like usual, she kind of hovered next to me as we walked to the lot. My stomach was in knots because I knew I wasn't going to let her just slide into the passenger seat this time. Sure enough, she did that thing where she just started pulling her back over her shoulder like she was already claiming the seat. I stopped and said, hey, before we head out, I need to talk to you real quick. She froze like I'd just told her she was in trouble. She gave me this nervous half smile and said, oh, what's up? I tried to keep my voice as neutral as possible. So listen, I don't mind helping sometimes, but I really can't keep driving you home every day. It's way out of my way, and the road to your place is rough on my car. I just need to be upfront because I don't want to seem flaky or unreliable. I just can't make it a regular thing. She blinked at me a few times, clearly not expecting it. There was this pause where I swear I could hear my own heartbeat. And then she said, oh, yeah, I didn't realize it was a problem. I tried to soften it a bit. It's not that it's a huge problem. It's just not sustainable for me every day. I don't want to create tension, but I also don't want to set up this expectation that I can meet. She looked down at her shoes and sort of laughed. But not in a funny way, more like an awkward covering up being caught off guard kind of laugh. I mean, it's just been easier this way. Derek's hours are weird, and I hate sitting around waiting for him. But, yeah, I guess I didn't think about it from your side. That made me feel a little guilty, even though I know I had nothing to feel guilty about. She didn't come off angry, just kind of embarrassed. She muttered something like, I'll figure something out, and then asked if I could just this once take her to Derek's restaurant again so she could wait for him there. That was fine with me, so I said sure. and it was way less stressful than that long haul to her apartment. The ride was kind of quiet compared to normal, though. She scrolled on her phone instead of talking my ear off like usual. When we pulled up to Derek's restaurant, she said, "Thanks, I'll figure something else out for next week." I nodded and told her no hard feelings, that I just wanted to be honest. She gave me a small smile and hopped out. Since then, things have been different, not hostile, but definitely different. She's been polite at work, but she doesn't hang around me as much anymore. She still chat during downtime, but it's less personal and more surface-level stuff. Like, "Did you see the schedule for next week?" Or, "That table in the corner was brutal tonight." Part of me is relieved. I don't want to be her unpaid Uber, and I needed that boundary. Another part of me feels a little bad because it's obvious she took it personally. Even though I tried my best to phrase it kindly. Jessica, my roommate, said, "Honestly, that's the best possible outcome. She got the message without blowing up at you. If she's a little distant now, that's her processing. Not your problem." I guess she's right. It's just weird when you're new at a job, and you don't want to accidentally create a bad dynamic with the first person you kind of clicked with. But the truth is, I'd rather have slightly awkward interactions at work than spend an hour a day chauffeuring someone who isn't my responsibility. The funny thing is, I overheard her yesterday telling another coworker that she and Derek are going to look into getting her a license again. So maybe me pulling back was the nudge she needed. Who knows? Either way, I feel lighter now. My commute is back to normal. I'm not spending extra gas money, and I don't feel trapped at the end of every shift. It's not perfect between me and Kayla anymore, but honestly, I think that's okay. It's been about a month since I first told Kayla I couldn't keep driving her home, and I figured I'd share how things ended up. Honestly, it's been a roller coaster, but I think it landed in a good place. At first, like I mentioned before, things between us were awkward. She wasn't rude or mean, but she definitely pulled back. For the first couple of weeks, she barely made small talk with me. If we had to interact for work, she was professional, but she didn't hang out by my station anymore or walk with me to the parking lot. I won't lie, it stung a little because I actually liked her as a person before all this, and it felt like one boundary erased the whole connection. But then something shifted. I found out from another coworker, Rachel, that Kayla had a huge blow-up with Derek, the boyfriend. Apparently, he wasn't happy about having to adjust his hours to line up with hers, and he gave her a hard time about not having her own license. That fight pushed her into signing up for driving lessons again, so now she's been practicing. And rumor is she's going to test for her license in a couple of months. She even came up to me last week and said, "Hey, I just wanted to say sorry if I made you feel like I was taking advantage. I was in a rough spot and didn't think about it from your side. That caught me off guard." But I told her I appreciated her saying that, and I reassured her I didn't think badly of her. I just needed to protect my own time and car. She laughed and said, "Fair enough. Honestly, you probably saved me from being too comfortable relying on people." Derek's been on my case nonstop, and I know I need to get it together. Since then, things have actually gone back to being pretty friendly. Not like best friends or anything, but we chat at work again, and it doesn't feel tense. The other day she even joked, "When I get my license, I'll give you a ride home just to even it out." It felt like she was trying to show me she didn't hold a grudge. For me, it's been a lesson in boundaries. I'm a people pleaser by nature, and when I first started this job, I wanted everyone to like me. That's why I said yes to those rides at first. But saying no early enough really did save me from being trapped in a pattern that would have burned me out fast. And the world didn't, and Kayla adjusted. I kept my sanity. And now I'm more confident about standing up for myself at work in general. I think what surprised me most is how much respect I ended up getting afterward. Rachel even told me, "You handled that way better than I would have." Kayla's sweet, but she definitely latches on. And you set a good example that made me realize that saying no doesn't automatically make you the bad guy. So yeah, in the end, I don't regret how I handled it. Kayla's working toward independence. I'm not anyone's unpaid chauffeur. And our work environment is still fine. If anything, it proved to me that being direct, even if it's uncomfortable, almost always pays off better than quietly stewing or overextending yourself. And who knows, maybe when she does get her license, she really will give me a ride just to close the loop. Stories number 3. Tifu, why not waiting until my fiance was asleep? I'm a 29-year-old guy and my fiancée, Emily, 31, is the love of my life. She's the first person I've ever felt completely safe with, but she's also carrying a lot of scars from her past. Before I met her, she was married to a guy named Jason. And from everything she's told me and from the way she still flinches sometimes when she talks about those years he spent their entire relationship tearing her down. He told her she was ugly, worthless, a bad mom, and that no one else would ever want her. He basically dismantled her confidence piece by piece until she started to believe it. When I first started dating Emily, I noticed how reflexively she'd apologize for everything. Like bumping into me in the kitchen or forgetting to switch the laundry. She avoided mirrors and hated taking pictures. It broke my heart because to me she was the most beautiful, capable, resilient person I ever known. She has a daughter, Lily, who's 7, and Emily is an incredible mom, but every time I'd compliment her, she'd brush it off with a little laugh or outright say, "No, I'm not." So I started doing research. I have high-functioning autism, and sometimes I latch onto problems like puzzles to solve. Her low self-esteem felt like the biggest puzzle of my life. I read books, blogs, even psychology articles. And one thing that stuck with me was an article about unconscious reinforcement. It said that when people hear affirmations or positive words in their sleep, it can sink into their subconscious and slowly start to change the way they see themselves. It sounded almost too good to be true, but I figured, what did I have to lose? So I started this secret little ritual. When we'd go to bed, and I was sure she was asleep, I'd whisper all the things I loved about her. I'd brush her hair back and say things like, "You're so beautiful, you're the best mom Lily could ask for, you're smart and strong and I'm the luckiest guy alive." Sometimes I'd ramble for 10 minutes, just pouring my heart out, while she breathed softly beside me. And honestly, it seemed to work. Over time, she started pushing back less when I gave her compliments. She let me take photos of her without hiding her face. She started wearing colors instead of just gray and black. She even smiled when Lily and I told her she was beautiful. I thought maybe, just maybe, those words in the quiet hours were planting little seeds. Fast forward to last week. This is where I majorly screwed up. We were going to bed after a long day. She'd been grading papers. She's a middle school English teacher, and I was playing around with my camera. We crawled into bed, turned the lights off, and I thought she had drifted off faster than usual. So, like I always do, I leaned closer and started whispering. I told her she was my soulmate, that I'd never loved anyone like this before, and that she was the most beautiful woman I ever laid eyes on. And then I hear, I froze. My brain short-circuited. She was wide awake, staring at me with these confused, tired eyes, and like a complete idiot, I just blurted out, "Oh shit, you're awake." The silence that followed felt like it lasted a full hour. She blinked at me and said, "What? What are you doing?" I felt my face go red and I stammered out the whole truth, how I'd been doing this for months, how I read about subconscious affirmations, how I just wanted her to believe how amazing she was. I expected her to laugh at me or maybe even get weirded out, but instead, her eyes filled with tears. She grabbed my hand and said, "You've been doing that this whole time." I nodded, feeling like the biggest dork in the universe. She started crying, not loud ugly crying, but these quiet tears running down her cheeks. She whispered, "No one's ever loved me like this before." Then she pulled me close and said, "Promise me you'll always love me as much as you do right now." I told her I did, and I would. She kissed me, probably harder than she ever had before, and we just laid there holding each other. I was still embarrassed, but in that moment, it felt worth it. The next morning she teased me about my secret midnight pep talks. She told me it was the sweetest, nerdiest thing anyone had ever done for her. Later, when she was getting ready for work, I heard her humming to herself in the bathroom mirror. She actually smiled at her reflection, and I don't think she realized I saw that. So yeah, I guess my big failure is that I'm absolutely terrible at judging when someone is actually asleep. But if the end result is that Emily knows, without a doubt, how much I love her, then maybe it wasn't a failure at all. TLDR. Tried to secretly boost my fiance's confidence by whispering affirmations while she slept. Screwed up by saying them too early one night. Accidentally confessed the whole thing. She cried, told me she's never felt so loved, and now thinks I'm an adorable dork. Stories number for my best friend cheated on her boyfriend last weekend, and I can't stop wondering if I should tell him. He's been spiraling for the past week because I feel like I'm stuck between loyalty to my best friend and my own conscience. I'm 24F, and my best friend, who I'll call Ashley 24F, has been dating her boyfriend, Jason 26M, for a little over 2 years. They live together, share rent, and we're even talking about maybe getting engaged sometime next year. I've been around both of them a lot since Ashley and I have been close since high school. Honestly, Jason is a good guy, quiet, dependable, and the kind of person who's always willing to help someone out. He's come over to fix things in my apartment more than once, just because Ashley mentioned I needed help. Last weekend, Ashley and I went out with a couple of mutual friends. It was supposed to be a normal girls' night out, but one of our friends, Haley, brought along her cousin, Ryan, who's about our age. We ended up at a bar downtown, and the night started out pretty normal: drinks, music, dancing. I noticed Ashley seemed a little more flirtatious than usual, but I brushed it off because she's always been a bubbly person. But then, after her third or fourth drink, things shifted. She and Ryan were dancing pretty close, and I kept thinking, okay, she's just tipsy and being dumb. Nothing will come of it, except something did come of it. Toward the end of the night, I went outside to grab some fresh air because the bar was too crowded. When I came back in, Ashley was nowhere to be found. I checked the bathroom, no luck. Finally, Haley gave me a look and tilted her head toward the back corner booth. And there they were, Ashley and Ryan, making out like they were teenagers at prom. Full-on kissing, hands all over each other. I froze, my stomach dropped, and I couldn't even process it. When Ashley finally came back over, she acted like nothing happened. I didn't say anything right there in front of everyone, but when we were in the Uber heading home, I asked her, what the hell was that about? She immediately brushed it off. Oh, it was just kissing. I was drunk. It didn't mean anything. I told her Jason didn't deserve that, and she got defensive, saying Jason never wants to go out. He's too serious. He doesn't understand her fun side, and that she's allowed to make mistakes. The next morning, she texted me thanking me for not making it the big deal and promised it wouldn't happen again. But then she added, please don't ever mention this to Jason. He'd never forgive me. And that's where my guilt comes in, because now, every time I see Jason's face in my mind, I feel like I'm betraying him just by staying quiet. He literally texted me the other day asking if I wanted to come over for dinner with them this weekend. And I couldn't even bring myself to answer right away because I felt sick at the thought of sitting across the table from him knowing what I know. Here's where it gets even worse. Haley told me she saw Ashley and Ryan exchanging numbers before we left the bar. That makes me think it wasn't just a one-time mistake. And when I confronted Ashley about it again, she swore she wasn't planning to see Ryan. But she also admitted she liked the attention and that Jason never compliments her the way Ryan did that night. I tried to tell her that was no excuse, and she got mad at me, accusing me of being judgmental and acting like I'm better than her. So now I feel stuck. On one hand, Ashley has been my best friend for almost 10 years. She's been there for me through breakups, family drama, and some of the worst times of my life. On the other hand, Jason doesn't deserve this, and if I stay quiet, I'm complicit. If he finds out later and realizes I knew, he'll hate me. And honestly, I wouldn't even blame him, but if I tell him, I'm basically blowing up my friendship with Ashley. She never forgive me, and she tell everyone that I was disloyal, that I ruined her relationship. Our entire friend group could implode, because people will take sides. I've been rehearsing conversations in my head. If I did tell Jason, how would I even say it? Hey, just so you know, Ashley made out with some guy at a bar last weekend. It feels so messy, and at the same time, staying silent feels like lying by omission. Last night, I couldn't sleep because I kept picturing Jason proposing to her someday, completely oblivious to what she did. And I kept thinking, if you were him, wouldn't you want to know? I know the classic advice is stay out of other people's relationships, but it's not that simple, and you're right in the middle of it. Ashley made me a part of this the moment she told me to keep quiet. And now I don't know what the right thing is anymore: be the loyal best friend, or be the honest person who refuses to cover for cheating. Either way, someone is going to end up hurt. So, I wasn't planning on updating, but a lot has happened since I first posted and I feel like I'm losing my mind trying to keep it all inside. Writing it out feels like the only way I can process. After I wrote that post, I tried to just sit on it. I thought maybe I could bury it, keep my head down, and let Ashley handle her own mess. But life doesn't work like that. A couple of nights later, Ashley invited me over to her and Jason's apartment for dinner. Jason had apparently spent all afternoon cooking. He made homemade lasagna from scratch, garlic bread, salad, the works. The guy was smiling, pulling out chairs for us, pouring wine like this was some Norman Rockwell dinner scene. Meanwhile, I was sitting there trying not to hyperventilate because every time I looked at him, my brain screamed, he has no idea. At one point, Jason turned to Ashley and said, "Hey babe, did you ever tell Op the good news?" I froze. Ashley smiled and announced that Jason had started looking at engagement rings. They weren't officially engaged yet, but he wanted her input before making a decision. My fork literally slipped out of my hand and clattered against the plate. Jason laughed and said, "Guess that was a surprise?" I forced a laugh too, but my stomach was in knots. When I left that night, Ashley pulled me aside and whispered, "You better not say anything to him, you promised." I told her I never promised anything. I just hadn't told him yet. She got mad and said I was being dramatic, that it was just one kiss. I asked her flat out if she'd talk to Ryan again. She swore no, but her eyes darted away when she said it. The very next day, Haley texted me screenshots. Ashley and Ryan had been messaging each other on Snapchat. Nothing super explicit, but flirty enough to confirm my suspicion. Stuff like Ryan saying, "Had fun the other night," and Ashley replying, "Your trouble lol." That was the tipping point for me. I called Ashley and told her she needed to either come clean to Jason or I would. She started crying, saying I didn't understand, that Jason is boring, that she doesn't want to break up but she also doesn't want to feel trapped. I told her she couldn't have it both ways. She hung up on me. For a couple of days, nothing happened. Then, out of nowhere, Jason texted me asking if Ashley was acting weird. He said she'd been distant and on her phone more than usual. He even asked, "Is there something I should know?" I swear my hands were shaking when I read that. It felt like the universe was giving me a moment of choice: stay loyal to Ashley, or finally tell the truth. I didn't respond right away. I went back and forth for hours, then I ended up calling him. I didn't spill everything at once. I started by asking if he really wanted to know, if he was sure. He said yes. So I told him about the bar, about the kiss, about the messages with Ryan. I didn't dramatize it or sugarcoat it. I just laid it out. Jason went completely silent for what felt like forever. Then he said, "Thanks for being honest," and he hung up. Within an hour, Ashley blew up my phone. She was screaming, crying, calling me a traitor, saying I ruined her life. Apparently Jason confronted her the second I hung up with him. She admitted everything but tried to downplay it. Jason didn't buy it. He packed a bag and left to stay at his brother's place. Now Ashley isn't speaking to me. Half our friend group is furious at me for betraying her, while the other half is quietly saying, I did the right thing but don't want to get involved. Haley has my back at least, but it's been exhausting. Jason actually texted me again yesterday. He thanked me for being honest and said he doesn't know what he's going to do long term, but he feels like he dodged a bullet knowing before putting a ring on her finger. I could practically hear the heartbreak through his words. Meanwhile, Ashley has posted cryptic Instagram stories about fake friends and snakes in the grass. She even deleted a bunch of our old photos together. 10 years of friendship basically down the drain. I don't regret telling Jason, but I feel hollow about how it all went down. Watching someone I thought I knew so well burn everything to the ground over one stupid night and then double down instead of owning up has been brutal. I keep replaying that dinner in my head. Jason smiling, planning their future, while Ashley smiled back knowing she was hiding all this. That image alone makes me feel like I did the right thing, but I'd be lying if I said it doesn't hurt like hell to lose my best friend in the process. It's been about 6 months since everything went down, and I figured I'd close the loop here. I didn't think I'd have so much to say, but enough distance has given me clarity about the whole mess. The night Jason left Ashley's apartment, I really thought maybe they'd cool off and patch things up. That's been their pattern in the past whenever they fought: lots of yelling, then a make-up dinner, then back to normal. But this time was different. Jason didn't come back. He stayed at his brother's, and from what I heard later, he told Ashley he wasn't willing to play detective every time she went out with friends. He didn't want to spend the rest of his life wondering if she was sneaking around. A week later, Ashley called me sobbing. She was furious at first, calling me every name in the book, but when reality sank in, she broke down and said, I ruined everything. She begged me to talk to Jason, to convince him she just made a mistake and didn't mean it. I told her no, that wasn't my job. And honestly, I wouldn't lie for her even if I wanted to. She hung up on me and, as far as I know, never spoke to Jason again after that. Jason, on the other hand, did something I respect the hell out of. He walked away clean. He didn't drag it out, didn't stalk her social media, didn't trash talk her to anyone. He just moved on. Last I heard, he's dating someone new. I ran into him once at a coffee shop, and he looked lighter than I ever seen him. He told me, I thought I was losing everything, but honestly, I think I got my life back. That stuck with me. As for Ashley, things got messy. She leaned hard into this narrative of being the victim of fake friends and people who can't mind their business. A couple of our mutual friends sided with her, mostly the ones who party with her all the time. But a lot of people started distancing themselves after they realized she wasn't taking responsibility. She moved in with Ryan for a bit, which blew up in spectacular fashion 2 months later, when he apparently cheated on her too. The irony of that is so on the nose it almost feels scripted. Haley has been my rock through all of this. She never wavered, and honestly, if it weren't for her, I'd probably still be doubting myself every day. She reminded me that friendship isn't about blind loyalty, it's about accountability, too. And if someone can't handle being called out when they hurt others, that says more about them than it does about you. I'd be lying if I said I don't miss Ashley sometimes. 10 years of inside jokes, late-night talks, and shared history doesn't just evaporate. But I also realized I was carrying the friendship way more than she ever did. I made excuses for her flakiness, her drama, her selfishness, because I loved her like a sister, but when push came to shove, she wasn't willing to do the same for me or for Jason, who honestly treated her better than anyone she ever dated. Looking back, the hardest part wasn't losing her. It was learning that someone you trust so deeply can look you in the eye and keep lying. Once you see that, it's almost impossible to unsee it. So where does that leave me now? Honestly, at peace. I don't regret telling Jason. I don't regret drawing a line with Ashley. It cost me a friendship, but it saved me from years of being complicit in something toxic. And weirdly, it's made me closer to the friends who stuck by me. Haley, a couple of others. The group feels smaller now, but in a good way. Real, steady, no games. If I could go back, I'd still tell Jason every single time, because if I was in his shoes, I'd want to know. And as for Ashley, well, I hope she figures herself out one day, but that chapter is closed for me. Stories number 5. Widow for telling my in-laws I am going to stop taking my niece to her technical school if she doesn't change her attitude. 3 for F. Have been with my husband 33M for 14 years this year. During this whole time, I have been helping my MIL 67F and FIL 63M take care of my niece 16F. They adopted her, going through the courts and everything when she was to do to my SIL 39F being a drug addict. It used to be small things, such as taking her shopping every so often, or taking her to school once or twice a week, but lately it feels like my husband and I have been doing most of the work that technically her legal guardians should be doing. We have 3 children ourselves, and my husband feels like we just adopted a 4th child. I don't mind helping them out, especially because we live on their property. We do pay rent, and they help to watch our 2 youngest after school. They are 8 and 11. But my niece's attitude has been getting worse and worse recently, and honestly, I don't think I should have to deal with it. This year she signed up for an after-school program that allows high school students to earn a technical certificate, such as medical assistant or CNA. It's 45 minutes away from her high school, and it runs until almost 8 at night. The office I work for is 5 minutes from the after-school program, and they asked if I wouldn't mind bringing her home some nights, as my office allows us to work our own hours, and I can get work done while she is at the program. I said no problems, with the expectation that they would either be driving her to the program or sharing some of the responsibility. This program started at the end of July, and I or my husband have been the only ones taking her or driving her back home. Now I still don't mind taking her home, but it gets kind of old for me to leave my office early, in the middle of my workday, to drive 45 minutes to pick her up when my in-laws only live 3 minutes from the school, only to drive another 45 minutes back into town, drop her off, and then have to wait for hours until she gets off and drive her back. That's issue number 1. Issue number 2, her attitude. She acts entitled, like she is OWED this. She cops an attitude if I'm even 1 minute late to picking her up. She cops an attitude if I don't feel like stopping at a gas station so she can pick up snacks or sodas. She cops an attitude if I don't pick up dinner for her before I pick her up from the program. She has told me shut up, be quiet, you're stupid. The whole shebang of an angsty teenager. I have 3 children myself, 1 teenager 13, and my 2 youngest. I know that coursing hormones can make them unpredictable, but my children might cop an attitude every once in a while, that there are consequences to their actions. My niece, discipline and consequences are not even in her vocabulary. My in-laws keep apologizing for her behavior. They get the same attitude and thanking me for what my husband and I are doing, that they are not disciplining her. Every time they try, she throws a tantrum, and because they do not want to hear it, they end up giving her what she wants. Shutting off her phone, taking her electronics away, not allowing her to go to friends' houses, school functions like dances. This past weekend, everything came to a head, and my husband is ready to have it out with them, and honestly, so am I. Every other word out of her mouth is either shut up or you're stupid. Her tone of voice is pure attitude. She demanded to go to a football game, which originally my in-laws said no to due to her failing a class, but because of her throwing a tantrum, they let her go. Who did they ask to take her? My husband or myself? I refused, due to the attitude, but my husband ended up taking her and picking her up. She had a dance the next evening. My in-laws were unhappy because my husband and I had plans to go to a friend's house. We had our own babysitter for our children, so they had to take her there, but then called us to pick her up after the dance ended. It ended at 10. Mind you, we were at our friend's house 30 minutes away from the school, while they were only 3 minutes away. I told them they had to pick her up, which started a huge argument, but my husband and I didn't care. Today, my niece threw a tantrum because I picked her up 10 minutes late. She was not going to be late to her program, and I had parent-teacher conferences for my own children that I needed to attend. She started screaming and yelling at me and berating me because she had to wait 10 minutes while I finished up with my children's teachers. My husband said he is going to tell his parents that they need to buck up and show up, as my niece is not your responsibility, but I'm afraid it would be too harsh. But I'm not sure I can deal with this attitude any longer, and my in-laws are not doing anything in the way of discipline. Redditors, what if I told them that I would no longer be taking her anywhere? Stories number 6. My girlfriend to 1F of 18 months asked my 2M preference about her pubic hair and now finds me revolting. So yesterday my girlfriend casually asked me how I prefer pubic hair to be groomed. She usually keeps hers short, but neat. I assumed she was just looking to change things up and wanted my opinion, so I answered honestly and said that I find completely shaven attractive, but in the grand scheme of things I couldn't care less. It's not a turn-off if there's hair, and that I like the way she has it now. Well, it turns out she had a lecture today. College. She studies psychology, and the topic was on pedophiles. Apparently one of the talking points was that pedophiles are attracted to the lack of body hair. When she told me this, I asked her, are you seriously calling me a pedophile because I find completely shaven attractive? Can I just point out that you're 21 and not 12? She basically skirted around my questions and then stormed out of my apartment when I kept pressing her on it. As she left, she called me revolting and is now ignoring my calls and text messages. What the fuck? Honestly, not even sure where to go from here. We've never had any issues and was planning on proposing in the next year. Where has this even come from? TLDR. Girlfriend pretty much called me a pedo because I told her I liked shaved pussy when she asked me my preference. Relevant comments. Commenter 1. Just because pedophiles like no pubic hair doesn't mean all people who prefer no pubic hair are pedophiles. Just like all dogs have 4 legs doesn't mean all things with 4 legs are dogs. Commenter 2. And I was going to tell my SO that we don't need a dog because we have a table. Commenter 3. Okay, so with that logic, if she likes your face clean shaven over a beard, then she is also a pedophile because little boys don't have facial hair. Commenter 4. I don't know, I'm a woman and like a clean shaven look. I just don't find hair attractive down there. That being said, to call someone pedophile over shaved pubic is a little too much. We can say the same thing about men who like small breasts too then. The preference of shaved puss comes from porn most likely. The porn industry was the first to push this trend into the masses. They did that for better aesthetics and for visuals so that everyone can see everything up close. It has nothing to do with liking children. Commenter 5. Shit, I shave and have small breasts. My BF has some explaining to do. I also prefer when he's shaven down there. So we're both pedos, I guess. Commenter 5. Hi. I also studied psychology, and in my analysis of her behavior, it seems like she went into this looking to create conflict with you. She anticipated your response, given that it's fairly common knowledge that we have normalized and sexualized adult women being completely hairless. Agree with it or not, there was a high likelihood of you responding with some degree of favor towards this. Dating behavior like this can be a function of feeling a loss of control in an interpersonal dynamic. When you can create conflict and engineer it in a way to gain moral superiority, you have gained the illusion of control over something. Or, this could be a red herring conflict in which something like this is used in place of discussing other conflicts, as they may be too difficult to address head-on. An extension of that being this could be a way for her to break up with you over something different that she has determined she won't share with you directly. Either way, conflict in and of itself is not bad. In fact, it's essential for healthy relationships. But when someone manipulates another into conflict, especially over hypotheticals, is a form of gaslighting, or in instances where there was no constructive purpose for it to happen. This is unhealthy. Commenter 7. This is the best response here. The issue is not whether she is right or wrong about being a pedophile. The issue is that she was so eager to manipulate OP into feeling like an amoral monster. Commenter 8. Why is it when people learn about psych, they almost immediately attempt to use it as a cudgel against the people around them, almost never apply it to themselves in any meaningful way? Commenter 9. As a former psych degree, I can say many of the people I knew were actually trying to figure themselves out. There is definitely a tendency to take an abnormal psych class and start seeing it all around you, though. I suspect she's early in the program. Most folks figure out that it's not a good thing to do before they get too far. Commenter 10. I am studying psych in Germany, and basically is all math and science the first 2 years. And if you can't get past the advanced statistics, you don't get to do the diagnostics. Not only does this weed out PPL trying to figure themselves out, but it gives you a balanced perspective where you wouldn't dare just diagnose someone from something small update. My girlfriend to 1F of 18 months asked my to 2M preference about her pubic hair and now finds me revolting. So an update to my previous post, she ignored my messages, calls for 3 days. At which point she texted me asking if I was free for her to come over for a movie night. I told her sure, but we need to talk about what happened before anything else. She replied with about what? I figured it was best to wait until I actually saw her in person before trying to discuss the issue, which I did. When she arrived, we sat down and I started by saying that I was upset by our last conversation and I'd like to discuss what happened. At which point she said it doesn't need to be discussed. Can we leave it? I said not really, no. I'd like to get to the bottom of what actually happened. And also discuss your reaction of storming out and not talking to me for 3 days and then acting like nothing has happened. She basically refused to discuss it. So I told her that if we can't at least discuss what happened, then I want to break up, and that she needed to get her stuff that she has in my apartment and leave. She lost her shit, bawling and screaming so much that my neighbors came and knocked on the door to check if everything was okay. He's a chill dude, so asked if he could stay whilst she got her stuff together, as she seemed to calm down once he was present. She basically sulked around slamming cupboards whilst she got her stuff and then left. So yeah, no real answers, and I'm still confused as fuck as to what happened. I text her mom to keep an eye on her, as I'm kinda thinking she's losing it. I've never seen her like this and it worries me. She's been blowing up my phone about how she loves me and can't imagine life without me. Honestly, this whole thing has soured me and I'm struggling to see any way that we will continue this relationship. Thanks to everyone who replied before. TLDR, my girlfriend baited me into a question about pubic hair, implied I was a pedo, ignored me for 3 days, and then tried to act like nothing had happened, and so I broke up with her. Fun. Relevant comments. Commenter 1. She tried to co-stanza a deal breaker. I never thought of having a neutral party sit in during a move out, but that's both an incredible gesture from your neighbor and also a very smart thing to do. Commenter 2. It really sounds like she knows she fucked up but doesn't have the emotional maturity to apologize. You'll do better without her. Reply. See, this is what confuses me the most. We've had disagreements in the past where she's been out of line and she's always apologized and handled things well. The same for me. I've screwed up before and apologized. I always thought we had a healthy relationship with good communication, but clearly I was wrong. Commenter 3. You did the exact right thing. with the possible exception of texting her mom about it, but as long as that truly came from a place of concern and not spite, then I think that's okay too. Huge red flag to not be able to own up to and apologize for one's mistakes. And I'm so glad you found out now rather than a few years into a marriage. Reply: I didn't tell her mom what went down specifically. I just said that we'd broken up. She'd been behaving erratically and if she could just keep an eye on her for my peace of mind. Regardless of the fact we've broken up, I still care for her and want to make sure she's got someone there who can make sure she's okay. Commenter 4. For some people it's physically impossible to admit they're wrong. You basically asked her to either admit she was wrong or get out. Also, I think childish ultimatums like this are just that. Childish. Sure, if you don't feel like being around her, don't. But this is probably the dumbest breakup story I've read on this sub. Just do what makes you happy. Reply: I don't really see how the ultimatum was childish at all. I'm not willing to just allow behavior like this to slide. It sets a precedent for the relationship that I don't think is going to lead to anything good. I wanted to discuss and resolve the issue at hand, because the relationship would not survive unless we did. What would your advice have been to do? Let it all go and leave it unaddressed. Commenter 5. No, you forced a conflict, and got one. You didn't give her any choice, but to get out. Sure, it can seem nice having the moral high ground, but you basically got the reaction you deserve. Honestly, my advice is just to reconsider how absolute you are on your morals. Should you force people, even your SO, to either have a difficult conversation or leave, that's not that far from emotional abuse, and I guarantee this will not be the last time someone chooses the door instead. Commenter 6. Read the original and hope for an update. I bet she asked around, and all her friends told her she was batshit crazy. She was embarrassed, so refused to talk about it. Either way, good on you for drawing a line in the sand. It needed to be discussed before you moved on. Crazy that even after your ultimatum, she wouldn't talk about it. Edit. My comment really blew up, Pan. I don't have time to discuss with everyone. For those saying the GF might have overreacted due to some undisclosed trauma, that's a possibility. But to me it seems more likely she was just fixated on the correlation between pedos and the preference of hairlessness and massively overreacted. Even if her actions were fueled by trauma, that doesn't excuse her bad behavior. Being accusatory, ghosting for 3 days, gaslighting, pretending nothing happened, and having a tantrum when confronted. In my opinion, even if she now disclosed her reaction was due to some traumatic experience, it would change nothing, assuming something traumatic even occurred. Any understanding, compassion the GF was entitled to as OP's partner went out the window when she chose to be a. For those saying OP was wrong to give his GF an ultimatum. Ultimatums are usually bad, but in some instances, and I agree with OP in this case, could be necessary. Prudent. What the GF did had to be addressed. It was a watershed moment in their relationship. OP's GF chose wrong and OP did what he thought was best. Kudos to OP for sticking to his guns. Stories number 7. AITA for saying, okay, and my partner threatened to move out and break up with me. I've been with my partner nearly 2 years. He lives in my house, which I'm currently renting. We have blended our families and there's several stepkids involved. When we moved in 6 months ago I thought this was forever. I thought I'd found my soulmate, but after moving in he changed very quickly. Nothing I did was good enough. He kept telling me things I needed to change, has been pointing out my flaws and why he is so unhappy daily. I kept trying, but then it became him saying over and over, change or I will break up with you. There were things I've needed to work on. Of course, I have my healing to do and I've been on a real journey. He has a lot of unhealed trauma too and was cheated on in his marriage and has ADHD. Despite changing and doing the deep work, something he hasn't done, he has continued threatening to break up with me and move out with the stepkids multiple times. The last time, something broke in me. I sobbed for a whole weekend. I couldn't look the kids in the face. I loved him, so I decided to give him one last chance. This was on basis he promised never to do this again. I said, if he did we would be over. He said he understood. My trust was broken, so I asked that we slow down plans to move into our own place together, or to put him on the lease. He's reacted very badly to this. Every day he's lashing out, frightened and saying he feels really insecure and he's technically homeless and he and the kids have no physical security. I've asked him to repair and work on things together before we make big commitments, but he's continued these daily monologues of his pain. My voice has got lost. The other day he asked for a final decision. I said no, not right now, let's work on stuff. And hopefully soon. He said you either commit to moving in with me by the end of the day to a new place or putting me on the lease or I'm done. I'm moving out. I said no. Informed him he'd broken his promise and he knew the consequences, that I accepted him, and he has 2 weeks to move out. Now I'm apparently cruel and heartless and it's my fault for not giving him commitment. And it would have been so easy to put him on the lease, that I've been denying him and the stepkid's physical security. That 2 weeks isn't enough time. I know he has disorganized attachment. I know he has trauma. I know he can't help it. But have I really caused this not putting him on the lease and things were so unstable? Update. I wobbled and gave him a path back, said if he can own what he's done, take true ownership, and commit to therapy. If we can slow right down we can talk mistake. He said no, he's not working on anything unless he's on the lease. I said no, he said he needs to stay here until he can find a place to buy because he can't afford to rent in his own. And it's all my fault, and he trusted me and I've let the kids down. I said no, we are here because you broke a promise. You knew what would happen if you did it again, and you did it anyway. You said you wanted to move out again, and I accepted you. I'm sorry you hadn't thought about the logistics, but you can't stay here indefinitely until you buy somewhere. He shouted at me, said he was going to go fucking ballistic in a minute and that I didn't want that. Then he called me fucking disgrace and that I was fucking disgusting, so I guess that's that. Thanks everyone. You were right, hard lesson learned. Stories number 8, entitled Teenagers Cut the Line at Disneyland. A couple of weeks ago, my whole family took a trip to Disneyland. And when I say whole family, I mean the entire crew. There were 22 of us in total. My parents, my younger brother and his wife, my sister and her husband, my cousins, aunts, uncles, and all the kids. We'd been planning this trip for over a year, saving up and making it into a big family reunion type of deal. It was chaotic but in the best way. Everyone had their own idea of what rides they wanted to hit first. Though we stuck together as best we could and made sure the kids had a blast. My wife Emily and I have 3 little ones, Jacob 7, Lily 5, and Owen 3. They're at that age where they're still too small for the big rides. But luckily, because our group was so large, we could switch off and make sure everyone got to ride what they wanted. Someone would always stay behind with the younger kids, and then we'd swap. That way, nobody felt left out. It worked out pretty well, though it required a lot of coordination and patience. On the second day, Emily and I finally got our chance to ride Millennium Falcon, Smuggler's Run in Galaxy's Edge. I'd been looking forward to it for months. I grew up on Star Wars, and this was basically my childhood dream come to life. The posted wait time was about 45 minutes, which was reasonable considering it was the middle of the day. We hopped in line with my cousin Mark and his wife Sarah. About 20 minutes into the line, we noticed 3 teenage girls weaving their way through the crowd. They couldn't have been older than 15 or 16. One of them had her face buried in her phone. The other 2 were sipping on those huge Disneyland lemonades and giggling like they owned the place. They had matching high school spirit shirts on, so it wasn't hard to tell they were all together. To their credit, they at least said excuse me as they squeezed past everyone. Though it was the kind of excuse me that didn't sound sorry, all it was more like they were daring anyone to challenge them. At first, I didn't think too much of it. We all kind of assumed they were just catching up with the rest of their group who maybe had held a spot for them. It's annoying, sure, but it happens all the time at theme parks. Emily just shrugged and said, whatever. Not worth it, out of sight, out of mind. But then, near the very front of the line, as the anticipation was building and we were finally next to board, it happened again. Out of nowhere, 3 more teenage girls showed up, wearing the exact same school shirts, holding their drinks, smiling like they were the cleverest people in the world. They breezed past us and said the same casual excuse me as if it was no big deal. Now, here's where it got ridiculous. When the Disney cast member at the front asked them how many were in their group, the answers didn't even match. One girl said 3, another said 6. And the third just smirked and kept sipping her drink like she didn't have to answer to anyone. That's when the puzzle pieces clicked. These were friends of the girls who had cut the line earlier, except their group had already gotten on the ride. These latecomers weren't just catching up, they were skipping the entire 45-minute wait and trying to sneak on at the very last second. I looked at Emily, and I could see she was just as frustrated as I was. After standing there sweating in line with tired feet, kids waiting with other family members, and everyone else around us patiently following the rules. There was no way I was letting these kids get away with it, so I said, loud enough for the cast member to hear, "Wow, you girls cut the entire line and expect us to just be cool with that." The cast member, probably in her 20s, with the Disney smile plastered on her face, looked between us and the girls, clearly trying to size up the situation. Emily jumped in right away and explained calmly but firmly that the girls had not been in line, that they were part of a bigger group who had already boarded, and that letting them on would mean bumping people who had actually waited their turn. For a second, I thought the cast member might brush it off. Disney workers deal with so much chaos every day that sometimes they just let stuff slide to keep things moving. But to my surprise, she turned to the teenagers, still smiling politely, and said, "I'm sorry, but you'll need to head back and wait in line like everyone else." The look on those girls' faces was priceless. The fake grins dropped instantly, replaced with eye rolls and muttered complaints. One of them tried to argue, saying something about how their friends were literally right inside, but the cast member didn't budge. She just waved Emily and me forward and let us through. Walking into the ride while those girls were being escorted out felt like a small but satisfying victory. Not just for me, but for everyone else who had been waiting patiently and watching this whole thing unfold. A couple of people in line behind us even gave us little nods of approval, like, "Thanks for saying what we were all thinking." And let me tell you, the ride itself was absolutely worth the wait. Sitting in the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon, pulling levers, flying through space, it was like being a kid again. But what made it even sweeter was knowing we didn't let a group of entitled kids ruin the moment by skipping ahead at the very last second. It was a tiny thing in the grand scheme of life, but it reminded me that sometimes you really do have to speak up. Rules exist for a reason, and if you let people steamroll over them, it just encourages more of the same. Watching those smug smiles disappear was the cherry on top of an already awesome day. Stories number 9, AITA for telling my friend she's not trad wife material. I have a friend, Sophie, that I met at orientation in college. Initially, she tried flirting with me, but I wasn't into her, so we ended up being friends. The big thing about Sophie is she always talks about how much she wants to be a trad relationship where she takes care of the home and kids. He works, and they raise their kids religious and all-American. I find this a bit silly because she's the opposite of trad herself. She sleeps around a lot, dresses revealingly, drinks and parties and gets high a lot, etc. Understandably, the trad guys she tries to entice into a relationship want a woman that's more trad herself, and turn her down. She asked me why I think the guys she wants don't want her, and I replied that she's not really trad enough to be trad wife. She got upset and said I was shaming her. But I don't think I was. I'm not casting moral judgment. It's just a fact that her lifestyle isn't very trad. Stories number 10, my girlfriend is amazing, but I can't force myself to feel the attraction. I wish I don't really know how to start this without sounding like a terrible person, but I'll just be honest. I've been dating my girlfriend, Emily, for about 3 years now. On paper, she's kind of perfect for me. She's funny, she's thoughtful, she always remembers the little things I say, and she has this calm, grounding energy that balances out my own tendency to overthink everything. She's been there for me through family stuff, job stress, and just the ups and downs of life. Most people would probably say I'm lucky to have her. But here's the thing. I've never been head over heels attracted to her physically. When we first met at a mutual friend's cookout, I thought she was cute. Don't get me wrong. She had this friendly smile, and we got into a deep conversation about books and music right away. It wasn't like I was uninterested. I wanted to talk to her. I wanted to know her, but it wasn't that gut punch of attraction I'd felt with other girls in the past. At the time, I figured that maybe those fireworks were overrated, and that building something with someone who actually shares your values and interests is more important, so I leaned into it. We started hanging out more. We went on hikes, hit up trivia nights at a local bar, cooked dinner together. It was good, comfortable, easy, and as time went on, I realized she really is one of the kindest people I've ever known. She volunteers at an animal shelter. She always tips generously. She's close with her family. She's just solid. But here's the problem that keeps eating at me. I still don't feel that physical pull. I look at her and I think she's cute, but I don't get that raw, almost irrational desire that I know some guys feel for their partners. And the more I try to ignore it, the louder it gets in the back of my mind. Sometimes I'll be out with friends, like when my buddy Ryan brings his girlfriend Sarah around, and I'll see the way he looks at her. Like he just wants to devour her with his eyes, and I think, why don't I feel that way about Emily? And then comes the guilt, because she looks at me like that. I'll catch her staring at me with this softness, or she grab my arm when we're walking, or she kiss me out of nowhere when I'm rambling about work, and I feel awful, because I can't mirror it back the way she deserves. I keep asking myself if attraction is something that can grow, or if it's just not there and never will be. There have been times where I've really tried to push myself into it, planned a weekend trip, bought her lingerie, tried to set the mood, and yeah, we've had sex, but it always feels mechanical on my end, like I'm checking a box, not getting swept up in it. The weirdest part is that in other ways, I love being around her. I love our conversations. I love when she laughs so hard she snorts. I love how she insists on making pancakes every Sunday morning. But love in every way except physical attraction feels like a hollow foundation for a relationship that's supposed to last decades. It makes me wonder if I've wasted her time. She's 28, I'm 30. She's hinted at wanting kids in a few years. And marriage isn't something she's shy about either. Every time it comes up, my stomach knots, because I know if I married her as I am now, I'd be carrying this private doubt into the marriage. That doesn't sound fair to her or to me. I've even talked to my brother, Mark, about it. He's been married 5 years, and when I told him, he said, "Dude, attraction matters, don't kid yourself." I still look at Jessica like she's the hottest woman in the room, and I just sat there, drinking my beer, wondering what's wrong with me that I can't feel that way about Emily. At the same time, I think about everything I'd be giving up if I walked away. She knows my family. My mom adores her. My friends think she's great. She's woven into every part of my life now. And I know if I ended things, she'd be devastated. The thought of her crying and asking me why makes me feel physically sick. But is it worse to stay, pretending, hoping something magically shifts that maybe never will? That's where I'm stuck. It's been years. This isn't just a phase. And I'm starting to wonder if I'm a coward for not admitting it sooner. I keep looking at her when she's cooking dinner or telling me about her day, and I just wish that spark was there. Because if it was, I know we'd be unstoppable, but it's not, and every day that passes, I feel like I'm digging us both deeper into a hole that'll be harder to climb out of. Update. I finally told her the truth, and it went nothing like I imagined, so I didn't expect to be writing this, but a lot has happened since my original post. I read through a ton of the comments back then, and as much as it stunned to see people call me selfish, shallow, or cowardly, some of it stuck with me. A lot of you said the same thing in different words, that staying with someone you don't feel fully drawn to is actually crueler in the long run than ripping off the band-aid now. I didn't want to hear that at the time, but it kept echoing in my head. Fast forward a couple months, and the weight of it all was unbearable. Every time Emily would say I love you or mention something about our future, it was like this invisible hand squeezed my chest. I'd smile and nod, but inside I felt like a liar. It finally got to the point where I couldn't even enjoy our Sunday pancake ritual, which had always been our thing. I'd sit there chewing, looking across the table, thinking, she deserves someone who looks at her like she's the best thing that ever happened to them. And that's not me. So, one night after dinner, I told her we needed to talk. She sat down on the couch with this concerned look, and before I even said anything, I could feel my throat closing up. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought she could hear it. I stumbled through it. I said something like, "You know I care about you so much, and I love the life we've built. But I feel like I've been hiding something from you. I've been struggling with not feeling the physical attraction I wish I did, and I don't think it's fair to keep pretending." As soon as the words left my mouth, I hated myself. Her face just fell. She sat completely still, eyes wide, like she was trying to process what she had just heard. Then she asked, in the quietest voice, "So you've never been attracted to me?" That question gutted me. I said, "It's not that I'm not attracted to you. It's just not in the way I think you deserve." I kept hoping it would grow, but it hasn't the way I wanted it to. She got up, walked into the kitchen, and just stood there. I didn't know whether to follow her or give her space. Eventually she said, "So all this time, every kiss, every moment, you've just been faking it?" I told her no, that I meant it when I kissed her, when I held her hand, when I laughed with her. I told her I loved those things, but the spark, That fire never matched the way I feel about her as a person. I was shaking saying it, because I knew it sounded like I was splitting hairs. She started crying, not the loud sobbing kind but the silent, shoulder-shaking kind, and that broke me. I went to her, but she put up her hand and said, "Please don't touch me right now." We sat in silence for a long time. Eventually she said, "So you've been thinking about this for years?" And I just, wasted my time. I told her that was my biggest fear, that I'd stolen time she could have spent with someone who would love her in every way. She didn't yell, she didn't throw anything. Honestly, that almost made it worse. She just looked exhausted, like I had drained something out of her. She went to the bedroom, closed the door, and I slept on the couch. The next morning, she had already packed a bag and said she was going to stay with her sister, Megan, for a while. She didn't say much else, just, "I need space." And then she left. The silence in the apartment after she walked out was suffocating. I sat on the couch staring at the wall for hours. The guilt hit me in waves, sometimes sharp, sometimes dull, but it never let up. I kept replaying everything in my head: her laugh, her little habits, the way she'd curl up against me when we watched movies, and all I could think was, I destroyed something good because I couldn't force a feeling. It's been a few weeks now. We've texted a little, but it's polite, surface-level stuff. She's still at her sister's. I don't know if she's planning on coming back or if this is the beginning of the end. Part of me thinks I should just move out and give her the clean break she deserves. Another part of me keeps wondering if maybe we could work through it with counseling. But deep down, I know the core problem hasn't changed. That missing piece is still missing. The irony is, now that she's gone, I miss her like crazy. I miss her voice in the morning, her random texts about a dog she saw on the street, her way of making the apartment feel warm. I miss all of it, but I don't miss her in that other way, the way I should. And that realization just confirms everything I was afraid of. I don't know if I did the right thing by finally telling her, but at least she knows the truth now. I just wish the truth didn't hurt so damn much. Update 2. It's been months, and life looks completely different now. It's been about 4 months since I last updated, and honestly, I feel like my entire life has been flipped inside out. When I first told Emily the truth, I thought the worst part would be the actual breakup moment, the crying, the pain, the guilt. But it turns out the hardest part is the silence that comes after. For a couple of weeks, we barely spoke. She stayed with her sister, Megan, and I stayed in the apartment. Every little thing reminded me of her: the coffee mugs she loved, the throw blanket she always wrapped herself in, even the stupid candle she bought that I used to complain about being too strong. It all became like these little landmines in the apartment. I couldn't move without thinking of her. Eventually, Emily came by with Megan to pack up her stuff. That day is burned into my brain. She was polite but cold, like I was just some acquaintance she used to know. We didn't fight, we didn't even really talk. She just methodically went through the apartment, boxing up her things while I sat on the couch pretending to scroll on my phone. Megan gave me dirty looks every few minutes, and honestly, I don't blame her. At one point, Emily picked up a photo of us from a trip to Asheville, a selfie on a trail with the mountains behind us, and she just stared at it. I wanted to say something, anything, but nothing came out. She set it face down in the box and kept going. That moment hurt more than any words could have. After she left, it was like the apartment stopped being a home. It was just 4 walls and a bunch of furniture. I lasted maybe 2 weeks before I couldn't take it anymore and broke my lease. I moved into a smaller place across town. It's fine, it's functional, but it feels empty. Here's the part that surprised me, though. As painful as it's been, I also feel this strange sense of relief, like I'm not walking around carrying a secret anymore. There's no constant voice in my head whispering that I'm living a lie. I still miss her. God, do I miss her, but I don't regret telling her. Of course, that doesn't mean it's been easy. I've run into mutual friends a few times, and it's always awkward. My buddy Ryan invited me to a group hangout, and when I showed up, Sarah asked casually how Emily was doing. The look on her face when I told her we broke up told me everything. Emily must have shared at least some of the story. I can feel people judging me, and again, I don't blame them. My mom was probably the hardest. She adored Emily. When I told her what happened, she actually cried and said she was like family to us. My brother, Mark, was blunt. "You're an idiot. Attraction matters, sure, but you let go of someone who actually gave a damn about you." Hearing that from him cut deep. But here's the thing. I've started dating again. Nothing serious, mostly just drinks or coffee, a couple of casual dinners. And the first thing I noticed was how different it feels, and the attraction is there. On my second date with a woman named Rachel, when she laughed and touched my arm, I felt that electric jolt I had been missing all those years. It was almost disorienting, like my body was reminding me, this is what it's supposed to feel like. That said, I'm cautious. The last thing I want is to jump into something new just to fill the void. I've been seeing a therapist, and we've talked a lot about how I tend to overthink and stay in situations because I don't want to hurt people. She said my guilt drove a lot of my choices with Emily, and she's not wrong. I kept us together out of fear, not love in its fullest form. As for Emily, from what I've heard through the grapevine, she's doing okay. Apparently, she went on a trip with friends and has been throwing herself into work. A mutual friend mentioned she's on a dating app now, which made my stomach twist when I heard it. Part jealousy, part sadness, part relief, mostly. Though, I just hope she finds someone who looks at her the way I never could. She deserves that more than anyone. I know a lot of people here probably think I'm a jerk for how long I dragged things out, and I can't really argue with that. But I've learned something from all this. Love without attraction feels like friendship wearing a disguise. And attraction without love is just lust wearing one too. You need both. Or it's like trying to build a house with half the foundation missing. I'm not sure what the future looks like for me, but I do know one thing: I won't settle again. It's not fair to anyone. Stories number 11. My longtime friend has started drifting into right-wing ideology, and I don't know how to handle it. I've been sitting on this for months, just watching it unfold, and I finally feel like I need to get it off my chest. I'm not trying to start a flame war, and I'm not trying to paint myself as some hero. I just honestly don't know what to do with what I'm seeing. I have this friend, Daniel. He's 51, straight, and academic by training. He spent years as a doctor of psychology, and for the past decade or so, he's focused his work on digital behavior, how people interact online, and how tech shapes human psychology. He's self-taught a lot of what he knows now, but he's smart, one of those guys who can devour a book in 2 days and then explain it in a way that makes you feel like you missed something obvious. Daniel has never been super financially successful with his career. He does consulting gigs here and there, sells these strategy classes to companies, and teaches a course at a local university. He's always had a mad scientist vibe, lots of theories, some practical, some not, but money-wise, he never seemed to land on his feet. Still, he's charismatic in his own nerdy way, and over the years, he's become one of those friends I can talk to about big ideas, even if we don't always agree. Here's the thing. Daniel has changed, and I mean, dramatically. When I first met him, he was calm, approachable, nerdy in the best way. He'd listen to you, ask follow-up questions, share a perspective without making it feel like he was trying to win. He was open-minded. You could talk about gender studies, racial issues, politics, economics. He'd take it all in stride. He had his opinions, sure, but he wasn't angry. But about a year ago, something shifted. It started small. He'd make little comments about cancel culture or how people don't debate anymore. They just shout each other down. I didn't think much of it. Plenty of people gripe about that. But then the tone started changing. One day, we were sitting outside at this cafe in Boston, just catching up, and he brought up the last election. Out of nowhere, he said something like, "You know, the media stacked the deck against the conservative candidate. If you really look at the numbers and the coverage, it wasn't a fair fight." He said it so matter-of-factly, like he was revealing some objective truth. I kind of brushed it off, saying, "Yeah, but elections are always messy," and tried to steer the conversation elsewhere. But after that, it was like a dam broke. On Facebook, he started sharing these cheesy political memes, the kind you'd expect from your uncle who spends too much time watching cable news. He posted this one quote from Charlie Kirk, something vague about truth over feelings, and captioned it like it was profound philosophy. I remember staring at it, thinking, this man has written academic papers and he's posting memes now. The next time we hung out, I saw a different side of him. We were talking about work, nothing political, when suddenly he pivoted into this rant about woke ideology. His voice got louder, sharper. He said things like, "The left has gone completely off the rails, and the right hasn't moved, everyone else has shifted." He kept going, more agitated with each sentence, until he blurted out, "There are only two genders. All this trans stuff is mental illness." I sat there frozen. I'd never heard him talk like that. This was the guy who once led a whole lecture about understanding digital identity and respecting how people present themselves online. And now he was red in the face, nearly shouting about how trans people were sick. He even threw in, completely out of nowhere, "I have to defend my Jewish people from these attacks." And I was like, what? That hadn't even been part of the conversation. It was like he had a list of talking points he'd been saving up, waiting to unload. That night, I went home unsettled. I couldn't reconcile the Daniel I knew, the one who would happily debate ideas over beers, the one who loved analyzing cultural trends, with this angry, defensive version of him. Over the next 6 months, it just escalated. His social media became the steady drip of anti-woke articles, YouTube clips of conservative commentators, cherry-picked stats about gender and crime. When I'd see him, he'd always steer the conversation toward the decline of the left or the dangers of groupthink. And the worst part was, he wasn't calm anymore. He was visibly angry. His voice would rise, his face would flush, his hands would shake when he talked about it. To Daniel, I remember the calm, nerdy, curious guy felt like he was disappearing right in front of me. It's not like I had been super close to him recently. For about 2 years before this shift, we only talked occasionally. Life happened, you know. But reconnecting and seeing this new version of him feels surreal. Like watching a slow-motion car crash. I don't even know how to react when he talks like this. Sometimes I try to push back gently. Like, well, there's another perspective on that, or I don't think it's that simple, but it just makes him double down. Other times I just sit there, nodding along, because I don't have the energy to fight. And every time I leave, I feel guilty for not challenging him harder. It's wild to watch. It's like he's gone down a rabbit hole and doesn't even realize it. And I'm stuck here wondering if I should call him out more forcefully, distance myself, or just accept that this is who he is now. Because the truth is, I miss my friend. I miss the guy who'd get excited about explaining new research, who'd stay up late debating tech ethics without raising his voice, who wasn't constantly pissed off at the woke left. I don't know if that guy's still in there somewhere, or if he's gone for good. And I don't know what scares me more, losing him, or watching him turn into someone I barely recognize. Update. I finally confronted him, and it didn't go the way I expected. It's been about 6 months since I first posted, and a lot has gone down with my friend Daniel. When I wrote last time, I felt like I was just standing on the sidelines watching him transform into someone I barely recognized. Since then, I've had to face the fact that I couldn't keep watching passively. What really pushed me over the edge was when Daniel invited me over for dinner at his apartment. He's not much of a cook, but he made pasta and opened a bottle of cheap red wine. And we were just catching up. Things were fine for the first half-hour. Work, the weather, a bit of sports talk. Then, as if on cue, he slid right back into politics. He started talking about how the left is destroying academia and free speech is under attack. I tried to redirect, "Hey, how's teaching going?" But he just circled back. Then he launched into a rant about how schools are indoctrinating kids with gender ideology. His face got red, his voice rose, and he pointed his fork at me like he was lecturing a class. That's when I snapped. I put down my glass and said, "Daniel, I can't do this with you anymore. Every time we hang out, it's like I'm sitting through a Fox News monologue. You used to be curious, open-minded. Now you sound angry all the time. Do you even hear yourself?" He froze, mid-bite. For a second I thought maybe I'd finally gotten through to him. But then he laughed this short, bitter laugh and said, "So you've bought into all of it too? I thought you were smarter than that." I told him, "It's not about being smarter. It's about you not being the same person anymore. You're not debating. You're shouting. You're not listening. You're lecturing. You used to discuss things. Now it feels like you're trying to convert everyone." That set him off. He raised his voice, telling me I was blind, that I didn't see the manipulation going on in the media, that I was ignoring basic biological truths. At one point, he actually slammed his fist on the table, pasta sauce splatter onto the wall. I've never seen him like that. I stood up, grabbed my coat, and said, "I came here to spend time with my friend. If you can't be that, then I don't know what's left for us." And I walked out. The next day, I texted him saying, "I care about you, but I can't be around you when you're like this. If you ever want to have a real conversation, not a shouting match, I'm here." He didn't reply. 2 weeks went by before I heard from him. He sent this long message saying I had abandoned him just like everyone else and that he was tired of being silenced. He accused me of choosing ideology over friendship. reading it. I just felt this pit in my stomach. Since then, we've barely spoken. I saw him once at a mutual friends gathering. He was quieter than usual, kept mostly to himself. But when politics came up, he jumped right back into the same talking points. Some people humored him, others just ignored it. The tension was thick. Here's the thing. I don't hate him. I don't even think he's a bad person. I think he's lonely, frustrated, and found an identity in this right-wing shift that makes him feel powerful. But it's like watching someone you care about disappear into a fog. And every time you reach for them, they step further away. I've had to set boundaries for my own sanity. I can't be his audience anymore. I can't absorb the anger, the memes, the shouting. I told myself that if he ever circles back to the thoughtful, nerdy guy I used to know, I'll be there. But right now, that guy feels gone. It's sad. It's exhausting. It's a reminder that people don't always state who you thought they were. And I still don't really know how to react, except to accept that sometimes the only thing you can do is step back. Final update. A year later, and I've had to accept who he became. It's been just over a year since I posted about Daniel, and I figure I'd give one last update. This will probably be the last time I write about him because, to be honest, there's not much left to update. After that night at his apartment, when I confronted him, our friendship never really recovered. For a while, we exchanged the occasional text, but every conversation had an edge. If I said something about work, he'd twist it into a rant about how corporations are run by woke overlords. If I mentioned a book I was reading, he'd send me a YouTube link to some pundit debunking the author. It got to the point where I dreaded seeing his name pop up on my phone. Around the holidays, I reached out one last time. I sent him a simple message. I hope you're doing well. If you want to grab coffee and just talk, no politics, no debate side like that. He never responded. I later found out through a mutual friend, Jeff, that Daniel had joined a few online groups that lean heavily conservative. Not just conservative, but conspiratorial. Jeff said Daniel was posting long rants about media brainwashing and gender ideology ruining society. When someone pushed back, Daniel accused them of being sheep. It sounded like the exact opposite of the thoughtful, curious guy I met years ago. The last time I saw him in person was at a gathering for our friend Melissa's birthday. He looked older, more tired. His hair had gone mostly gray. His clothes hung a little looser on him. When I walked in, he gave me this half smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. We talked briefly about sports, about the weather, and for a moment, I thought maybe we could fall back into old rhythms. But then someone nearby mentioned a university hiring controversy, and Daniel launched into a tirade. Voices got tense, people drifted away, and I just sat there, watching. It was like seeing a storm you can't stop. On the ride home, I made a decision. I couldn't keep holding out hope for the Daniel I used to know. That person wasn't coming back, at least not anytime soon, and holding on to that hope was only hurting me, so I let go. I didn't block him. I didn't send some dramatic "we're done" text. I just stopped engaging. I muted his posts, stopped replying to his messages, and slowly let the friendship fade. And in that space, I started focusing on the people in my life who bring me energy instead of draining it. Friends who can disagree without shouting. People who talk with me, not at me. It hasn't been easy. Sometimes I'll think of a joke or a random article and instinctively want to send it to him. Sometimes I'll remember the long nights we used to spend debating tech ethics or human behavior, and I'll miss that version of him. And sometimes, late at night, I wonder if I abandoned him in a way that pushed him further down this path. But then I remind myself, we're all responsible for our own choices. Daniel chose to lean into anger, into ideology, into echo chambers. I try, more than once, to reach him. I tried to meet him where he was. In the end, he didn't want a conversation, he wanted validation, and I couldn't give him that. The hardest lesson I've learned through all of this is that friendships don't always end with a bang. Sometimes they fade quietly, like a song that trails off mid-verse, and as much as it hurts, sometimes that's what has to happen. So that's where things stand. Daniel and I aren't really friends anymore. Maybe someday he'll wake up and realize how far he's drifted, and maybe then we'll reconnect. Or maybe this is just who he is now. Either way, I've made peace with it. I miss my friend, but I don't miss the man he became. Stories number 12. My weird coworker turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. There's a guy at my office, let's call him Adam. If you walk past him in the hallway, you'd probably notice him instantly. But not for the usual reasons. Adam isn't flashy, doesn't dress particularly sharp, and doesn't care much for office politics. He's just different. He's always smiling, always asking how people are, but not in that shallow way where someone says how are you without waiting for the answer. He'll stop, actually look you in the eye, and listen. He's the kind of guy who remembers if you said your kid had a dentist appointment, and a week later he'll ask, hey, how did Emma's checkup go? Like he keeps mental notes just to make people feel seen. But then there's the stuff people call weird. At lunch, instead of sitting in the break room, Adam goes outside and stretches in the parking lot. Not subtle stretches either, full-on yoga poses right by his car. I've seen him do handstands against the wall of the building. Sometimes, if the sun's out, he'll nap on top of his car like a lizard warming itself on a rock. People make fun of him for it. I've heard the whispers in the break room. My boss, Jeff, once joked during a team meeting, maybe Adam can teach us how to sleep standing up next. And everyone laughed. People call him Zen Master, weirdo, even car nap guy. It always rubbed me the wrong way, but I never said anything. Honestly, I think I was too wrapped up in my own insecurities. See, I've been overweight for most of my adult life, sitting at a desk all day, bad eating habits, telling myself I'd start Monday for years. It all added up. I'd tried gyms before, but walking in and seeing everyone already fit and confident just made me feel out of place, so I stopped trying. Then one afternoon, I went outside and saw Adam stretching near his car. For some reason, instead of sneaking past like I usually would, I walked over and blurted out, hey, could I maybe join you sometime for a workout? Adam's face lit up like I'd just given him the best news of his week. Of course. Let's start today, he said, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. That's how it started. We walked over to the edge of the lot, and he had me do these light stretches, nothing fancy, just loosening up. Then he asked, when's the last time you went for a run? I laughed and said, high school gym class. He just smiled and said, perfect, that means you've been saving your legs for today. And somehow, that goofy line worked. He coached me through pacing, told me not to worry about speed, just focus on my breathing. Every few minutes he'd check in. How's your chest? How's your head? And I'd say, my chest is on fire, my head is screaming stop, and he'd grin and say, good, that means you're alive. I don't know how, but I kept going, and by the end of that first session, I ran 31 miles, a full 5K. I hadn't run that distance since I was a teenager, and I nearly cried when I realized what I'd done. Later that night, Adam texted me a PDF he'd made. It was a workout plan with my name on it, broken down into short-term and long-term goals. Short-term, run a 5,000 without stopping. Medium-term, build to a 10K. Long-term, half marathon, then full marathon. He added notes, too. Stuff like, don't compare yourself to anyone else, just compare yourself to yesterday you, and your body is stronger than your brain tells you. It wasn't generic copy-paste stuff either, it was personalized. He even noted what stretches had worked best for me that day. I sat on my couch reading it and just started crying. Not because I was sad, but because someone I barely knew, someone everyone else mocked, had taken the time to invest in me like that. No judgment, no jokes, just pure belief that I could be better. That was 6 months ago. Since then, Adam and I have become inseparable. He's my personal trainer, my motivator, my accountability partner, and honestly one of the best friends I'd ever had. We run together 3 times a week. He checks in on me daily. He celebrates every milestone like it's his own. The physical results are great. I've lost weight. My energy's up. I feel better in my own skin, but that's not even the best part. The best part is how I feel about myself. For the first time in years, I believe I can do hard things. I believe I'm worth the effort. And it's all because of the guy everyone else dismissed as weird. Here's what I've learned. People see different and label it strange. They laugh because it's easier than trying to understand. But if you push past that, if you actually get to know the person under the label, you might find someone extraordinary. I don't know how long Adam and I will work together, but I do know this: he's changed my life forever. Not because he made me run, not because he gave me a plan, but because he believed in me when no one else did. Be like Adam. Update. The weird guy who became my best friend just ran me across a finish line. It's been about 9 months since I posted about Adam. The guy at work everyone mocked but who ended up becoming my trainer. mentor, and friend. A lot has happened since then, and I figured it was time for an update. First off, yes, I stuck with it. Adam has this way of making sure I never skip, but without making me feel guilty. If I had a bad day, I texted him. Not feeling it, he'd reply, "Great. That means today is the day that matters most." Sometimes I'd curse him under my breath for saying stuff like that, but it always got me up and out the door. A few weeks ago, I ran my very first half marathon. 13.1 miles. I never thought I'd see that number next to my name, but there it is. Adam ran beside me the whole time, even though he's way faster than me. At one point around mile 10, I was dying, like, seeing spots, legs cramping, wanting to quit, and Adam looked at me, dead serious, and said, "You've already done the hard part. Quitting now would just mean doing it all over again tomorrow. Keep moving." It was such a simple line, but it hit me hard, and he was right. I kept going. When we crossed that finish line, Adam grabbed my hand and raised it like I'd just won the Olympics. I was crying, sweating, laughing, all of it. My coworkers who used to laugh at him, a couple of them actually came out to cheer. They looked at Adam differently that day, which brings me to work. Things have changed there too. People still joke about Adam's car naps or his yoga in the parking lot, but it's more lighthearted now. There's less malice in it. Some even join him. No joke, Jeff, our boss, the same guy who once made fun of him in a meeting, now stretches with him on lunch breaks. Adam never rubbed it in, never said "I told you so." He just welcomed them. That's who he is. As for me, Adam and I have become more than running buddies. We talk about everything: our families, our fears, our dreams. I learned that he struggled with depression in his 20s, and that's why he lives the way he does now. He promised himself he'd never let the world steal his joy again, no matter how weird it looked from the outside. That hit me like a ton of bricks. I used to see his quirks as quirks, now I see them as survival. His happiness isn't accidental, it's intentional, and being around him has made me rethink my own life in ways I didn't expect. Since my first post, I've lost 64 pounds. I sleep better, I laugh more. My doctor literally high-fived me my last checkup. And my mental health, better than it's been in years. But honestly, the biggest change isn't physical at all, it's how I see people. Because of Adam, I look at everyone differently now. That quiet coworker, maybe they're carrying something heavy. That weird neighbor, maybe they've figured out a happiness I don't understand yet. I'm still the same person, but I feel like I've been rewired. And to anyone who read my first post and reached out, I can't thank you enough. A bunch of you said, "Be like Adam." I've tried. I don't always succeed, but I'm working on it. Adam probably has no idea that he's become a Reddit legend. And honestly, I think he'd just shrug and say, "Cool, let's go run." Final update. The weird guy at work didn't just change my health, he changed my whole life. It's been a little over a year since I first posted about Adam, my coworker who everyone called weird and who ended up becoming my best friend and personal trainer. I didn't think I'd write again, but so much has happened that I felt like this deserved a final chapter. The biggest headline. A few months ago, I ran a full marathon, 26.2 miles. If you had told me 2 years ago that I'd be able to do that, I would have laughed in your face while reaching for another soda. But I did it, and Adam was there every step of the way. We trained for months, building up slowly. Adam never once let me rush the process. I'd get impatient, want to prove I could push harder, and he'd pull me back. "Discipline beats motivation," he'd say. "Motivation is why you start. Discipline is why you finish." Race day was brutal. Around mile 20, the infamous wall hit me like a truck. My legs felt like concrete, my head was foggy, and I wanted to quit more than I've ever wanted anything in my life. Adam slowed down, looked at me, and said, "This is the moment you trained for. The wall isn't real. It's just your brain begging you to stop. You've got more in you." And somehow, I believed him. We crossed the finish line holding hands, both of us laughing like maniacs. I've never felt so proud in my life. But the marathon was just one piece of this year. At work, the culture has completely shifted around Adam. People don't mock him anymore, not the way they used to. In fact, he's become kind of a legend. A bunch of coworkers now join him for lunch runs or parking lot yoga. Even Jeff, our boss who used to crack jokes at his expense, asked Adam to lead a wellness workshop for the whole department. I watched Adam stand at the front of the conference room, calmly explaining breathing techniques and posture corrections, while the same people who used to snicker actually took notes. It was surreal, and it made me realize something. Adam didn't change for anyone. He didn't bend himself to fit in, didn't water himself down, didn't get bitter. He just stayed true to who he was, day after day. And eventually, people caught up. On a personal level, Adam has become family to me. He came with me to Thanksgiving at my parents' house. My mom cried when she hugged him because she said, "You gave me my son back." Adam just smiled and said, "He did the work, I just reminded him he could." I think that sums up who he is. He doesn't want credit. He doesn't want attention. He just wants people to realize their own strength. Physically, I'm down 94 pounds since that first day in a parking lot. I'm stronger, healthier, and happier than I've ever been. But more than that, I see the world differently. I don't write people off. I don't assume weird means less. And when I catch myself slipping into judgment, I stop and think of Adam napping on top of his car with a giant grin on his face, totally unbothered by what anyone else thinks. That image reminds me to be kinder, to be braver, to be more myself. So this is my final update, because there's not really an end to this story. Adam and I are still running, still laughing, still talking about everything from philosophy to what brand of peanut butter is best. He's not just that weird guy at work anymore. He's one of the most important people in my life. If you take anything away from this saga, let it be this. Don't underestimate people who walk their own path. Don't let someone's quirks blind you to their value. And don't wait until Monday to start believing in yourself, because sometimes the person who changes your whole life is the one everyone else overlooked. Stories number 13. My accidental megatip to a pizza guy made me feel like a broke philanthropist. So this happened last Friday night. My buddy Ryan came over to watch the game. We decided to keep it classy and order pizza, wings, and a 2-liter of Coke because nothing screams adulthood like carbs, grease, and yelling at ATV in sweatpants. I put in the order online. Pretty standard large pepperoni, some garlic knots, wings, came to like $2,798, and I added a decent $5 tip when I paid. That was that. Then Ryan and I cracked open a couple of beers, and I completely forgot I had already prepaid. About 40 minutes later, doorbell rings, the dog goes berserk. Ryan yells, "Pizza's here," like a kid on Christmas, and I shuffle to the door with a $30 billfold in my hand. I'm not rich, but I was just buzzed enough to feel generous. When the driver showed up, I handed him the cash like I was handing out Oscars. The guy mid-30s, worn-out baseball cap, driving a car parked at the curb that looked like it hadn't seen an oil change since Bush was in office, just freezes. His face lights up like I just told him he inherited a lake house in Vermont. He says, "Thank you. Thank you, sir," in this thick accent, clutching the bills like they're going to blow away. I smile, give him a little "have a good one," shut the door, and walk back inside. Ryan's on the couch, already elbow deep in napkins, asking if I remembered ranch. Then my brain, running about 5 steps behind reality thanks to the beer, suddenly boots up. Wait. I already paid. I already tipped. That $30 I just handed him wasn't the bill, it was a tip. I just tipped this dude 120% on a $28 pizza order. I look down at my empty hand like maybe the money will magically reappear. Nope. Gone. Out the door. Ryan sees my face and goes, "What? Did they forget the wings?" I say, "No. I just tipped the guy $30. He blinks, like 30%. "No. $30. Ryan bursts out laughing so hard he almost chokes on a garlic knot. "Dude, you just made that man's month." For about 3 seconds I seriously considered chasing the guy down the driveway and being like, "Hey, sorry, that was a mistake. Could I maybe get some of that back?" But before I could even make a move, I glance out the window and see him heading back to his beat-up Honda, literally hop-skipping with this goofy grin plastered across his face, like he just unlocked a secret level in life. And I just couldn't do it. I stood there, broke as hell, pizza grease already soaking through the cardboard box on the counter, and realized, yeah, my wallet was crying, but my heart was kind of full. I may have completely screwed up, but for that guy, I probably turned a lazy delivery shift into something he'll talk about when he gets home. Ryan kept making jokes all night. "Careful. Don't open the door again, you might give away the deed to your house," but underneath the teasing, even he admitted it was kinda cool, and honestly, I don't regret it, not really. Sometimes being stupid generous feels way better than being smart stingy. So now I'm basically broke, but I got to cosplay as a philanthropist for 5 minutes. And some hardworking pizza driver got a story to tell about the night he met a clueless idiot who tipped like Mr. D after 2 beers. Sometimes mistakes really do upgrade someone's night. Update. My pizza guy remembered me. And now my neighborhood thinks I'm loaded, so apparently tipping someone 120% doesn't just end at one awkward night. It comes back, about 3 weeks after my little Mr. Beast cosplay moment. Ryan was over again. We're creatures of habit, so of course, we ordered from the same pizza place. Same large pepperoni, same garlic knots, same Coke. The only difference was this time I triple-checked that the payment went through online, because my bank account was still limping from last time. Doorbell rings, I open it, and who's standing there but the same delivery guy? Same baseball cap, same beat-up Honda idling at the curb. He sees me and just lights up, like his face does this instant recognition smile. He goes, "Ah, my friend," and gives me this dramatic little bow as he hands over the pizza. Ryan's on the couch whispering, "Oh no," like we're in a sitcom. I try to play it cool. I'm like, "Hey, man, thanks again, have a good night." But before I can close the door, the guy, let's call him Miguel, sticks out his hand and says, "You very generous. You make my week good." Now I'm blushing like an idiot because I didn't mean to make anyone's week. I just forgot how money works. But I shake his hand, mumble something about glad it helped, and close the door. Ryan immediately bursts into evil laughter. "Dude, he thinks you're some kind of millionaire. You are never living this down." And sure enough, next time I order, Miguel's at my door again. This time he brings extra garlic knots, says, "On the house, for my good customer." I try to protest, but he waves me off like I'm insulting him. It doesn't stop there. Word apparently spread at the pizza place, because a week later I walked in to pick up an order, and the kid at the counter goes, "Oh, you're the big tit guy," and literally nudges his coworker like, "That's him." I wanted to crawl into the oven and stay there. But it gets worse. One Saturday, I'm mowing my lawn, and my neighbor Karen, yes, actual Karen, of course, strolls over and says, "So, you're the guy throwing money at pizza delivery drivers? Huh, must be nice." And I realize Miguel must have told the story somewhere in town. Now the whole block thinks I'm some secret trust fund dude handing out $30 tips like candy. Meanwhile, I'm on a payment plan for my student loans and budgeting my groceries like a hawk. I tried to explain, "No, it was an accident. I didn't realize I'd prepay." But Karen just smirked and said, Sure. Very humble of you, like I just denied owning a yacht." Ryan finds this hilarious. Obviously, he started calling me Daddy Warbucks in our group chat. One friend changed my contact name in their phone to Baller. And the wildest part, Miguel still lights up every time he sees me. Last time he delivered, he told me, "I hope one day I can do the same for someone else," and that kinda hit me, because to me, it was just a dumb mistake, but to him, it was this moment of generosity that made him feel seen and valued. So yeah, I'm officially the big tip guy now. My wallet still hurts, but my heart's kinda okay with it. If the worst thing people think about me is that I'm too generous with pizza guys, I can live with that. Still, I'm hiding from Karen until this blows over. Final update. My accidental mega tip turned into a friendship. I didn't expect it. It's been about a year since I turned into big tip guy, and I figured I'd close this out with one last update because the story took turns I never saw coming. So, first off, yes, Miguel and I still cross paths. Not because I order pizza like a maniac, though Ryan would argue otherwise, but because Miguel doesn't even deliver pizzas anymore. He actually moved on to a new job and I weirdly had a front row seat to part of it. A few months after my second post, I ran into Miguel at the grocery store. He wasn't in uniform, just in regular clothes, and he recognized me instantly, gave me this big grin and said, "My friend, no pizza today, but still good to see you." We ended up chatting in the produce aisle for 20 minutes. That's when he told me he'd been taking classes at the local community college business courses because he wanted to open a small food truck someday. I just kind of stood there, blinking, thinking, here's this guy everyone pictures as the pizza delivery dude with the beat-up Honda, and he's out here chasing bigger dreams. He even told me that my accidental tip had helped him cover a textbook that semester. I about fell over. Something I did while half-buzzed and clueless actually played a part, however small, in this guy's future. Fast forward to this spring, I'm driving downtown, and what do I see parked near the farmer's market but a shiny red food truck with Miguel's Street Eats painted on the side, in bold yellow letters. I nearly caused a fender bender pulling over. Sure enough, there's Miguel inside, serving tacos with that same huge grin. I get in line, wait my turn, and when he spots me, his whole face lights up. He says, "Ah." The legend, loud enough that half the line turns and stares. I wanted the sidewalk to swallow me, but also, it was kind of amazing. I ordered 3 tacos, and of course he tried to give them to me for free. I refused, shoved cash at him, and tipped him again, this time intentionally, though not 120%. He laughed so hard and said, "Full circle, my friend." Now here's the part that really got me. My neighbor Karen, you remember her, was also at the market that day. She saw the whole interaction. Later that week, she came by my yard while I was grilling and said, "Okay, I admit it. You're not just Mr. Moneybags, you actually helped that guy." She still said it with that Karen tone, but it was the closest thing to respect I ever heard out of her mouth. Since then, Ryan and I make it a thing to hit Miguel's truck once or twice a month. The food is ridiculously good. Like, how was this guy ever delivering soggy garlic knots? Good. And every time, Miguel insists on calling me his first investor, which makes me want to crawl under the picnic table. But also I kinda love it. Looking back, it's still insane to me that a dumb mistake, me forgetting I already paid online, snowballed into all this. A year ago, I was just a broke dude who accidentally tossed $30 at a delivery guy. Now I'm friends with him. I get free tacos sometimes. And I've got this story about how generosity, even accidental generosity, can ripple way farther than you expect. So yeah, my wallet hurt that night, but my life's a little richer now. Sometimes you tip too much. Sometimes that tip ends up paying dividends you never could have planned for. Stories number 14. My girlfriend says I'm selfish for paying for my dog surgery instead of helping her sister with rent. I've been with my girlfriend for about 3 years. We live together. Things have been steady for the most part. And we were even starting to talk loosely about maybe getting engaged within the next year. I work in IT consulting, make a comfortable living, and bought a house about 5 years ago for bedrooms. Enough space to breathe. My girlfriend moved in with me last year. The star of my life, though, is my dog, Max. He's a 9-year-old golden retriever who has been with me since he was a puppy. Anyone who has a dog like that knows what I mean when I say he's family. He's been through everything with me: my rough breakup in my late 20s, my mom's health scare, even my first big job change. Max has this personality that's hard to describe unless you've met him. He'll lean on your leg until you pet him, insists on sleeping with his stuffed duck every night, and somehow knows when you're in a bad mood because he'll come and just rest his head on your chest. A few weeks ago, Max suddenly started having trouble walking. At first it was a limp, then it got worse within days. The vet diagnosed him with a herniated disc compressing his spine. The options were brutal: either surgery with a hefty price tag or euthanasia. I didn't even hesitate. The surgery was quoted at $8,500 out of pocket. I signed the papers. The surgery was expensive, but here's the thing: I can afford it. I've been saving for years. I don't live beyond my means. And while I'm not loaded, I'm not struggling either. It was never a question for me. This was my dog. I wasn't going to let money dictate whether he got a chance to walk again. Now, here's where things get messy. My girlfriend's sister, who I'll call Amanda, has been having a rough year. She broke up with her long-term boyfriend, moved out, and ended up renting a place she can't really afford on her own. She's fallen behind on rent, apparently by a couple months, and has been panicking about being evicted. I knew she was having some money problems, but I didn't realize the extent until recently, when my girlfriend, let's call her Sarah, found out I had just spent $8,500 on Max's surgery. She absolutely flipped on me. She said I was selfish, that I cared more about a dog than a human being, and that I should have helped Amanda out instead. Her exact words were, "You'd spend $8,000 on a dog, but you won't even help my sister keep a roof over her head." It turned into a multi-day argument. Sarah kept repeating that I had the means to help and chose not to, which made me a terrible person. I tried to explain that it wasn't a matter of means, it was about priorities. Max is my responsibility. I've cared for him for almost a decade. Amanda, while I sympathize with her, is not my responsibility. I also pointed out that Amanda's situation wasn't a random accident. She chose to stay in an apartment she can't afford after her breakup. It's not like she got laid off suddenly or had a medical emergency. I don't say that to be cruel, but there's a difference between bad luck and bad choices. Sarah didn't like that argument. She came back with, "So you're punishing her for being heartbroken. She didn't choose this either." We went in circles, then Sarah upped the ante by suggesting Amanda could move in with us temporarily until she got back on her feet. I immediately said no. I know how that story goes. Temporary turns into months, turns into a year. And suddenly I've got a third roommate who isn't contributing. My home is my space, and I've worked hard to keep it that way. Sarah said that by refusing, I'm showing I'm not a generous or compassionate person. I reminded her that generosity isn't about bending to other people's expectations, it's about choosing where and how you give. And in this case, my choice was clear. Max needed me. But Sarah hasn't dropped it. For the last 2 weeks, she's been cold, calling me cheap, selfish, and heartless. She makes little digs like, "Don't worry, at least Max has a roof over his head," or, "Guess love only extends to pets around here." It's gotten exhausting. From my perspective, I don't feel like I should have to justify this. Max's family, I wouldn't hesitate to spend money on him. And I don't regret it. Amanda is an adult who needs to manage her own finances. I've worked hard to get where I am financially, and I don't feel obligated to bail out someone else just because they're related to the woman I'm dating. At the same time, I can't shake this knowing thought in the back of my head. Am I missing something? Am I so tunnel visioned about my dog that I'm blind to how this looks to Sarah? I don't think so. But when you keep hearing the same criticism, it messes with your head. I love Sarah, but this whole situation has me questioning our values if she sees my decision as selfish. Maybe we're not as aligned as I thought, because to me, loyalty means taking care of the beings you're responsible for. And Max has never once let me down, so here I am, wondering if I'm the asshole for refusing to help her sister and prioritizing my dog instead. Update. My girlfriend says I'm selfish for paying for my dog's surgery instead of helping her sister with rent. He didn't expect my original post to get so much attention. I read through a ton of the comments. Thank you to everyone who gave thoughtful feedback, even if some were hard to read. A lot of people asked what happened next, and, well, a lot has happened since. First off, Max is recovering really well. For those who asked, the surgery went smoothly, and he's been doing physical therapy twice a week. I had to carry him up and downstairs the first couple of weeks, which made me realize just how heavy a retriever gets when you're deadlifting him at midnight. But he's improving. He's even starting to walk around the yard again, albeit slowly. Watching him chase a ball clumsily, determinedly nearly broke me in the best way. So yeah, zero regrets on that decision. Now, onto the mess with Sarah and Amanda. After my post, things with Sarah got worse before they got better. She kept bringing up the money situation daily. Every time I paid for groceries or ordered something on Amazon, she'd mutter things like, "Must be nice to have money for this when my sister is struggling." It turned into this constant passive-aggressive background noise in our house. Finally, I sat her down at the dining table and told her point blank, "Look, Sarah, I love you. I want this relationship to work. But I need you to understand that Max is family. I will always take care of him. Amanda is not my responsibility. If you think less of me for that, then maybe we have different values." She got quiet and didn't say anything right away. I thought maybe we'd hit a breakthrough. Instead, she hit me with, "So you're okay watching my sister get evicted while you have a 4-bedroom house sitting half empty?" I told her again I'm not comfortable with Amanda moving in, and I'm not comfortable being her financial safety net. I reminded her that Amanda is 32, has a job though not great pay, and needs to figure things out. Sarah cried that night. She said she felt like I was putting up walls against her family. I didn't know what to say except that I have to protect my boundaries. The next week, Amanda herself came over. I hadn't invited her, Sarah did. Amanda was polite, but clearly stressed out. She thanked me for considering helping her, words, not mine, and then gave me this whole rundown of her rent situation. How her landlord was threatening eviction, how she'd fallen behind because she'd been depressed after her breakup, etc. I listened. I really did. But at the end, when she said, "I was hoping maybe you could loan me a couple months' rent just until I get stable again," I had to tell her no. That was awkward as hell. She looked like I'd slapped her. Sarah jumped in immediately, saying, See, this is what I mean about selfishness. I tried to keep my cool. But I reminded them both. It's not about selfishness. It's about me not being her bank. Amanda left shortly after. Clearly upset, Sarah didn't speak to me for the rest of the night. Here's the kicker though, a few days later, I got a call from my buddy James, mutual friend of mine, and Amanda's ex. Turns out Amanda hadn't just been screwed over by her breakup. She'd been living beyond her means for a while, expensive car lease, online shopping habit, eating out constantly. Her ex had been quietly covering a lot of her bills, and they were together. When that ended, Amanda kept up the same lifestyle and, unsurprisingly, crashed. When I brought this up to Sarah, she brushed it off as gossip, but to me, it painted the situation in an even harsher light. I don't want to judge, but it confirmed what my gut was telling me. Amanda isn't dealing with bad luck, she's dealing with bad habits. Things with Sarah and me reached a boiling point about a week ago. She said, "If we're going to build a future together, I need to know you'll care about my family too, because if this was my mom or dad, you'd still say no." That floored me. I told her there's a massive difference between helping parents in crisis and enabling a sibling's poor financial choices. But she wasn't hearing it. She said, "It just shows where your priorities are. Dog first, people last. That's done. We haven't broken up, but things feel fragile. We're in this weird stalemate where we're being civil, but not affectionate, like roommates who happen to share a bed." Every time I look at her, I think about those words, dog first, people last. It makes me wonder if we're fundamentally incompatible. Meanwhile, Amanda apparently borrowed money from their parents to cover her rent for now. But I can feel the resentment radiating from both sisters. Amanda hasn't spoken to me since, and Sarah is clearly siding with her. So that's where I'm at. Max is healing. I'm standing by my decision, but my relationship might not survive this. I keep asking myself, did I choose loyalty to my dog at the cost of my relationship? Or did I just finally see a side of Sarah that was always there, the side that measures love by financial generosity? Either way, the house feels colder these days, even with Max curled up beside me. Final update. My girlfriend says I'm selfish for paying for my dog's surgery instead of helping her sister with rent. Well, it's been a couple of months since my last post, and I figured I owed you all the ending to this saga. A lot has changed, and honestly, it's not the ending I thought I'd be writing when I first came here. Let's start with the easy part. Max. He's doing fantastic. The physical therapy worked wonders. He's not the same as he was at 3 years old, but he can walk, climb the stairs, and even jog around the backyard again. Watching him stumble through his first post-surgery game of fetch, tail wagging like a propeller, was one of the happiest moments of my life. The vet called him a stubborn old man who doesn't know when to quit, and I couldn't be prouder. Now the messy part. Sarah and me. After my last update, things between us never really recovered. The tension was constant. Every argument circled back to Amanda. Even when we tried to do normal couple things like go out to dinner or watch a movie, Sarah would make some sideways comment, like, "It must be nice to afford appetizers when Amanda's still behind on rent." I felt like I couldn't breathe in my own house. Then came the breaking point. One Saturday, while I was running errands, Sarah let Amanda into the house without telling me. I came home to find Amanda in the guest room, unpacking a suitcase. I froze in the doorway and said, "What is this?" Sarah, totally calm, said, "She's moving in for a little while, just until she gets back on her feet. You'll barely notice." I saw red. This wasn't a discussion, it was a decision they made behind my back. In my house, I told Amanda, as politely as I could, that she needed to leave. Not tomorrow, not next week. Now, Amanda looked at Sarah like she expected backup. And Sarah just glared at me and said, "You're unbelievable." It turned into the ugliest fight Sarah and I had ever had. I told her this was a violation of trust, that she disrespected me and my boundaries. She screamed that I was heartless, that I cared more about a dog than her family, and that she couldn't see a future with someone who hoards money while people around him suffer. Something in me just shut off. I think that was the moment I realized it was over. The next day, Sarah packed up and left for her parents' place. Amanda went with her. I haven't seen neither of them since, except for one awkward encounter when I ran into Amanda at Target. She wouldn't even look me in the eye. It was brutal at first. The house felt emptier than I thought it would. For weeks, I caught myself expecting Sarah to walk into the kitchen or leave her shoes by the door. Breakups are weird like that. Absence feels louder than presence, but slowly, the silence started feeling less like loneliness and more like peace. A few weeks later, I grabbed beers with my buddy James, the one who knew Amanda's ex. He told me Amanda eventually had to move back in with their parents because she couldn't keep up with rent anywhere else. Apparently, she's still struggling, and Sarah has been working extra hours to help her out.